in the kitchen, so many recipes to share. So many cooks in the kitchen, with meals for you to prepare. We've got fruits and grains, veggies and beans, more healthy food than you've ever seen. So many cooks in the kitchen, plant-based meals to prepare. So many cooks in the kitchen, with ideas we're happy to share.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to So Many Cooks in the Kitchen. This is Cody Stubbe, and our main host, Dilip, is getting set up here. He must have stepped out for just a second, had a little technical issue, so he's going to jump back in as soon as he can. But we're going to go ahead and get going here. We're going to talk about so many comfort foods today, so thank you so much for joining us. And it looks like Dilip's getting plugged back in here. I can see him coming on. So hang tight for just a second. So we got so many presentations today. We got 13 presenters. And it looks like Dilip's in. So I'm going to pass it over to him in his kitchen. So here's Dilip.
That's all frozen. Should I go to my computer? Go ahead. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dilip Barman. I'm one of the cooks in the kitchen. We are all Food for Life instructors. Food for Life is a nutrition education program of the Physicians Committee. We've put together these variety of classes called Food for Life classes, which help you maintain great health. And if you end up with some health conditions, we show you how to manage some of those health conditions. We've been doing these shows monthly, these So Many Cooks in the Kitchen shows monthly, and I'm really excited because next month marks the last day of the first year of our being together. So please join us next month as well. Today our show is about comfort foods. All of our shows are vegan, whole food, plant-based with limited fat. So what does comfort food, what does that term mean to you? For most people, people think about foods they grew up with. And most of us have very fond memories of our childhood, of growing up, and of special foods. Our parents, no doubt, were very well-meaning, but they may or may not have had a lot of expertise with nutrition. So some of the foods some of us may crave, and it's interesting because it varies by culture, but at least in the American culture, it could be foods like pizza, macaroni and cheese, cookies, pancakes, nachos, foods like that. And in other cultures, there's other comfort foods. So we are going to kind of reinvent comfort foods. All of the foods I mentioned and a lot more are ones that our cooks today are going to be talking about. And we're going to make them, we're going to reinvent them so that they are healthful, they're vegan, and whole food plant-based. One comment at the get-go is our last speaker, Suzanne Fellows, will not be joining us today. But if you watch our shows edited on Plant-Based Network, she will record her segment and you will see it there. So she was going to do blueberry banana bread. We still have the recipes available for you, but we won't be demonstrating that today. And speaking of which, all of the recipes are available and we will share the link as well. So when we think also about comfort foods and we think about foods that sometimes we have cravings for, I have some hints in our document about things that you could do to make sure that the foods that you're eating are helpful. I like to think of the body as kind of a temple, a repository for good things. And so do we really want to be putting things like potato chips and French fries in our stomachs? So I'll tell you a fun story. My wife, who's filming me right now, she taught me a really important lesson. Before I married her, when I'd go grocery shopping, I'd always end up in the snack food aisle and I'd pick, a bag of potato chips. It may be vegan, but I'd pick a bag of potato chips or corn chips. Sangeeta said to me one day, Dilip, this is totally junk food. It has no value. Never mind the money you're spending on it and the packaging. Why do you buy it? And I said, you're right. So do I like French fries? Do I like potato chips? Do I like corn chips? I do. But I don't buy them, and it's thanks to Sangeeta. I don't buy them, they're not at home, so I don't have them to look for. If I go to a party and they have some potato chips, I'll have a few, and that's just a couple times a year. But there's many more healthful ways to make, for example, potato chips. So a few things you can do to try to satisfy those cravings is to eat high-fiber, nutrient-dense foods. Try eating and keeping on hand foods like bananas, apples, carrots, celery, whole grain crackers, peas in the pod, roasted chickpeas. There's so many good choices you can have. Try eating slowly and mindfully. When we eat quickly, the body doesn't have a chance to say, stop, I'm full, I'm satiated. So eat slowly and just don't buy those bags of snack foods. Try not to eat when you're tired. When you're tired, it's late at night and you have these cravings, you sometimes make poor choices. So try not to eat when you're tired, and then try to reinvent foods that could be healthier. So let me kick off today's program with nachos. And you can see I have a variety of ingredients. And I have two surprises for you. So the first surprise is you don't need to buy nacho chips. What I've bought is I bought some tortillas, and you can get a variety of tortillas. I like this brand. We get it at our local co-op. It's called Maria and Ricardo's. It's not a no-fat tortilla. There are lower-fat tortillas, but it's a reasonably low-fat choice. And all I'm going to do is this comes in a variety of flavors. So I'm going to use some whole wheat, and I'm going to use spinach. My daughter and I actually really like the spinach. And what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to cut the tortillas into triangles. So there's halves. And really suit whatever shape you'd like, but triangles work pretty well. Okay, good. So here's my imperfect triangles. One little piece of trivia is I do love teaching food and nutrition. I'm also a math teacher, so I could talk a little bit about equilateral triangles and altitudes and all sorts of things, but I won't. Come back tomorrow when I'm teaching math and you can hear all those things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to air fry. So my air fryer has a little tray, and I really just want to have one layer. So that's kind of one layer. So I've put my tortillas in a single layer, and I'm going to put it in my air fryer. My air fryer is like a big toaster oven. I love it. I happen to have a Cuisinart. There's several brands. I'm going to set it in air fryer mode at 350 degrees. And I'm going to take a quick look at the time because I don't want it to go more than 3 minutes. It cooks quickly and then it browns really quickly. You don't want burned chips. If you don't have an air fryer, you can use an oven. And with an oven, try something 350 or maybe a little bit hotter, and just keep an eye on the chips. So I don't want to give it time because each oven's different. The other surprise is cheese sauce. So the secret of cheese sauce is something called nutritional yeast, which we've talked about before. Nutritional yeast, fortified nutritional yeast, has B vitamins, which are really good for you. And it has kind of a, some people call it a cheesy smell, cheesy flavor. So I'm going to put some nutritional yeast in. I'm going to put a clove of garlic. I'm going to put some water. And all the measurements are in the recipe. You can change the quantities of water. When I blend it, if it's too thick, I'll add some more water. I'm going to add some garlic powder. Let's put some garlic powder in. You can add a little bit of salt. I'm going to add just a little bit of lemon pepper. I don't think that's in the recipe, but I love lemon pepper. And then we do put a little bit of fat in, and that's cashew. So there's a little bit of cashew, which gives it its creaminess. All the ingredient quantities, of course, are in the recipe book. Okay? And that's it. So what I'm going to do now is all these ingredients, I'm going to simply blend, and I'll quickly decide whether I like the consistency, and if not, I'll add more water. And you can see it does need a teeny bit more water. So my lovely assistant is going to put just a tiny bit more water in. So that's going to be a cheese sauce. Thanks, Anita. That's good. That's plenty. Okay, so she had a little bit more water. And I'm going to blend this again. You don't need a fancy blender like I have. Any blender will do. So Anita, just a little bit more water, please. And you can see that's a pretty good. Actually, tell you what, I'm just going to get the ingredients down a little bit. There we go. I'm making basically 1 or 2 servings. I think I'm fine. And so blending with small quantities can sometimes not be as easy as larger quantities. All right, so cheese sauce. Take a look. Okay. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at my chips. They're not quite ready. Various ingredients you can use with your nachos is guacamole. I'm not going to make guacamole today, but I've given some suggestions of how to make guacamole. Avocado is one of those few vegetables, culinarily, it's actually botanically a fruit that's high in fat. So if you enjoy guacamole, I recommend it in small quantities. You're going to want some salsa. I like this salsa that we get at our co-op, but my daughter's going to be sampling and it's too hot for her. So my wife picked up some other salsa this morning. You can add a variety of things. One thing I forgot that I could have added to the cheese sauce is a little bit of red pepper, and that'll make your cheese sauce a little darker in color, okay? Let me quickly demonstrate that. So here's some red pepper. I'm just going to cut some red pepper, and I'm going to go ahead and add that to my cheese sauce. The cheese sauce looks nice and yellow, but let's make it a little bit more orange. That's a nice trick for some extra nutrition, vitamin C, and some more color. So nacho cheese sauce, oftentimes we think of nachos and we think of kind of a fluorescent orange, so it made it a little bit more orange. So there's my cheese sauce. And I'm going to take a look at the chips. Hopefully they're ready. They are almost ready, so let me grab them. By the way, feel free to post questions. There's the nacho chips. I could have left them in there for another minute or two, but in the interest of time, I'm going to call that complete. So those are my chips. Again, I could have made them crispier, but let's go with these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to serve the chips. My daughter is going to be sampling these. My daughter's name is Anu, and she's a kid in the kitchen. The kids in the kitchen have their own program, and they're on in 2 weeks. They're going to be making salads. So it's a fun show, 4 to 12-year-olds. So I'm going to put some of the chips here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of my ingredients. So I'm going to I have some black beans handy. I made these in my pressure cooker. You can buy your own canned beans, or like I did, you can make them. So I'm going to put some of these black beans on my nachos. Anu, why don't you join us? Okay, there's some black beans. I've added a little bit of very fine carrot, and you can make nachos your own. So Anu has braces. She has to eat really thin cut vegetables. So I'm just going to put a few carrots on top. How's that look, sweetie? Okay. And then I'm going to add, there's this very nice, it's called Conehead Cabbage, I think. We found this recently. It's made by a local grower who specializes in Chinese vegetables. So I can take my time and rip it, or just use my knife. So put some greens on top. You can use kale. I'm going to put a little bit of, let's put salsa next. Do you want salsa or cheese next? Let's put cheese next, actually. So here's my cheese sauce. Look how thick it is. How's that look on you? There's the cheese sauce. I'm being a little bit generous with my cheese sauce because you're you. And then let's put some salsa in. You can put your favorite salsa. Put guacamole at this point if you'd like. Looks promising. Okay, there's the salsa. Sure. And then I'm going to put a little cilantro on the very top. And there you have it, nachos. Now, the good news is this was pretty easy. The better news is in a minute, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Mark Sukvenik, in the Chicago area, and he has a more elaborate recipe for pub nachos. But let's see what these nachos are like. They good? I didn't let the chips get too crispy because we were running out of time. So there you have it. Make the nachos your own way. And with that, I'm excited to pass the torch to Mark Sukvenik in the Chicago area, who's going to show you something about pub nachos. Take it away, Mark.
Hey everybody, how are you? Mark Cervenik here. I'm still celebrating the Cubs win from 2016. Yep, I'm a lifelong Cubs fan. And the last time I was thinking about this today that I ate pub nachos actually in a pub. The full fat, full cheese ones was probably in 2016 when the Cubs won the World Series finally after 108 years. So, diehard Cubs fan here. Anyways, we're waiting for the next World Series in Chicago. So today's recipe is pub nachos, and I frequently tell all of my students that as we transition specifically into whole food plant-based eating, we have to eat foods, we have to find foods that mimic or are really close to those textures and flavors and aromas that we ate when we weren't whole food plant-based. I've been whole food plant-based now for about a little bit over 3 years, and I'm at that point where I've lost so much weight now. Lost almost 40 pounds in the last 3 years, and that I had to go out and buy some new clothes yesterday. So it was really fantastic, and I was reflecting on what Philip said about junk food and chips and those types of things. And I got to tell you, I was at one of those superstores yesterday, and where I was buying some new jeans, and walked by the rows and rows of chips and peanuts and candies and so forth, and doesn't my head like look at them? But I've been doing so well. I'm so happy, and this diet is absolutely the easiest one that I've ever assumed in my entire life. I mean, I've been dieting since I was about 13, on and off, and yo-yo dieting, but now have maintained and actually lost the most weight over the longest period of time. And I really see this as the rest of my life. And one of the reasons is we can make these foods that remind us of what we ate in the past, but still are satiating and are really darn good. So, so my pub nachos are a little different than Philip's. It's got a little bit of a twist on pub nachos, and maybe a little bit more towards what we're used to. I'm using a cheese sauce called Jill's Game Changer cheese sauce. I think it's one that is clearly the closest to your traditional pub cheese sauces. And the ingredients, I've already made up a batch, but the ingredients are, as Philip's was, nutritional yeast. Instead of cashews, we use rolled oats. We also put some cornstarch, onion powder or onion granules, and then either a jar of roasted tomatoes or sun-dried tomatoes, and then lemon. And the recipe, again, is in our whole recipe attachment available, and you'll see that posted on Facebook as well. And it's just a phenomenal recipe. And then one of the secret ingredients is liquid smoke. The recipe calls for either pecan or apple smoke, but I just use regular liquid smoke. You put all those ingredients in, by the way, 4 cups of water as well. Put all those ingredients in a blender. I have a high-speed Ninja. Whip that up for 5 minutes, and then cook it on the stove. And the beautiful thing about this cheese sauce is it makes like 6 cups of cheese sauce, but then what I do is I just use a little bit and put the rest in a container. And I've stored this in my refrigerator for over 3 weeks. So when I want some more cheese sauce for maybe I'm making a pizza or or when I dip some vegetables in it, I've got a nice supply in my refrigerator. And that's one of the hacks that I choose, that I teach people, is when you're cooking, if you could cook in bulk, do that, because then you're only cooking once and then just have to reheat that. And this is just a great twist on that, cooking in bulk. So much like we've seen already, our nacho chips, I don't buy anything, any bag chips or anything like that. I take corn tortillas, and 2 corn tortillas like these are like 1.5 grams of fat. Triangle them up, right? Triangle them up. I bake mine in the oven. 10 minutes, 400 degrees, and they're perfect, and you hear how crispy they are. So then, now I've just kind of laid out all types of fixings here, and I'm going to take some black beans. We're going to put some black beans on there, And just, this would be really a fun thing, kind of a fun spread when we start getting back together with our friends, or we have our family or your children, kind of lay all this out and they can make their own little plate of nachos. I'm going to put some black beans. I'm going to throw some frozen corn, another convenience food that's really healthy. You can use frozen corn. Another one of my kitchen hacks. Don't be afraid to use canned or jarred or frozen foods, as long as they're really low in sodium. And now I'm gonna put some refried beans on there, and I make my own refried beans. All it is pinto beans and onions in a Instapot, and just blast away and let everything get soft, and then whip your beans up. And let's see, what else should we put on here? Oh, how about we throw the cheese on here now? And I got my cheese all heated up, and I'm just gonna put some cheese right on the top of that. Mine's a little more to the orange side. I like the flavor of roasted. Actually, this one has roasted red peppers that I personally roasted, but again, the recipe calls for a jar. So you see how just luscious and beautiful that is. I just can't wait to dive into this after I'm done with my segment. And now I'm gonna put some. We're gonna put some tomatoes on the top, and we're gonna put some onions. I had some red onions in my pantry. And let's see, what else should we put on here? Oh, how about a little bit of salsa? Oh my God. Who's coming over for some pub nachos? I think I'll be eating these and watching the Masters in between the show today. And then I'm gonna put some beautiful green onions on the top. Look at that, isn't that, oh my God. And then finally, let's put some black olives. I'm just gonna put a few black olives. Again, if you're trying to still lose weight, or you want to cut down on calories, you could leave the olives out, but there's you've got the whole olive here. We're not using any olive oil. There's no additional oil in this. I love my hot sauce, so I'm going to throw a couple squeezes of, oh my God, a couple squeezes of hot sauce on this, and maybe a little squeeze of lime just to kind of punch the flavor up a little bit. There we go. And I'm gonna dig in and eat some right in front of it. Oh, I'm sorry, but I can't wait. I can't wait. All these textures and crunches and tanginess, and my beans they were a little spicy, so just a beautiful plate of pub nachos. So check me out at Let's Eat Great Food, or on the web at www.letseatgreat.com. And I'd like to turn it over to my friend who was originally from the United States and then has lived several places. Her last was in Italy, and now she's in Abu Dhabi in the Middle East. I'm going to turn it over to my friend John. John, take it away.
Thank you, Mark. It was so fun watching you and eating you. I'm envious, stuck in my hotel room here for the last 9 days. I'm in quarantine. I have this GPS tracker. I can't even leave my room, but good news, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Tomorrow I'm going to be let free. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to my temporary kitchen here in Abu Dhabi at the hotel where I'm staying. And this evening I'll be talking to you about oatmeal porridge as the comfort food that has been helping me during these past 9 days, and why. Getting ready for this event was during the time that we were planning our move to Abu Dhabi, so it was a bit stressful, and I'm getting used to this hotel room cooking top, excuse me. So I was thinking of what is a comfort food, and I thought for me it's something with some kind of emotional appeal or something soothing in stressful times. And that stressful time could even be a stormy day with yucky weather outside. And in general, those are pastas, risottos, hearty soups, and some desserts from my childhood especially pop into my mind, and that has to do with cinnamon. We used to sprinkle cinnamon on desserts when I was growing up. So, but I thought in the last few weeks, I've been eating a lot of oatmeal, and I thought that oatmeal porridge and the way I make it is my comfort food. Therefore, I decided to share it with you this evening. As you can see, I'm working on it. Basically, the recipe, as Dilip has said, is in our recipe booklet online, but it's for 2 people, you use 1 cup of oats and 2 cups of water. A few dates per person. These are called deglet dates. They're tinier. If you have medjool dates, they're much larger. Perhaps you want to use 1 per person. And you chop them into small pieces and you put it into your pan with the water, the oatmeal, and the spices, the cinnamon and the nutmeg. And you cook it until your oatmeal porridge is cooked and come to a consistency that you're happy with. Once that's done, you of course dish it out and sprinkle some more cinnamon, and if you would like, you can drizzle some maple syrup on it as well. And at this time of the evening, I don't quite like putting too many sweets, so because it's at the moment nearly 10:30ish in PM. So this is going to be my sort of midnight comfort food snack. I'm turning it off because it's cooked. It usually takes about 3 to 5 minutes to cook it. So once cooked, and I like mine a little runny, but maybe you don't. So you do cook it as much as you wish. So once done, you can dish it out. I'm using all these hotel room pots and plates and cutlery and a few things that I had in my suitcase. So it's not the easiest kitchen to work in, but hey, we make do. I'm grateful for having had such a wonderful hotel room for my quarantine. So I got to thinking, I'm a scientist in my other life. When I'm not a cook in the kitchen, I work as an environmental scientist, and with my science background, I was wondering why this is a comfort food. So once you're done, you also put your bananas on it, and you sprinkle a few toasted almonds, and they're delicious. So, and because I love cinnamon, I put cinnamon to it. Now, this aroma and the warmth, this is comfort food for me. And monkey see, the monkey do. Mark ate his, so I'm hungry. I'll take a taste. It's just the perfect comfort food for getting ready for bed. I'm going to put this aside for a minute and put my scientist hat and perhaps tell you about why is this a comfort food for me? Because I was really curious, and I looked at the components and I was wondering why it's helping me relax and sleep so well at night, etc. And perhaps what I share with you might help you in the future as well. Have you heard of tryptophan? It's an essential amino acid, which means it's necessary for your body to function properly, but it's not produced by our bodies, so we need to obtain it from the foods we eat. My comfort oats are very rich in tryptophan because the main ingredients, the oats, the bananas, the almonds, and the dates are all full, not full, they all have tryptophan in varying quantities. The oats and the almonds are the champions. They're really high in tryptophan. And tryptophan, amongst its other functions, helps us with our sleeping, but not by itself. It's the first step in the synthesis of serotonin and melatonin. You've, I'm sure, heard of these terms. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter, which, along with many other functions, help us with mood and sleep regulation. And melatonin is a hormone produced from serotonin, and it regulates sleep and wakefulness. It's something we call the circadian rhythm. Maybe you remember from high school or college biology, the circadian rhythm. It has other functions too, but in that pathway from tryptophan to serotonin and melatonin, we also have other helpers along the way. So it doesn't happen like magic. So it's not good to just take a melatonin pill and expect miracles, because if your body isn't ready for it and there are certain vitamins missing, that's not going to work either, because along the path from tryptophan to serotonin and melatonin, we need vitamins B6 and B5 and methionine, which is yet another essential amino acid. The good news is we have all of those in these 4 main ingredients. So when we eat the whole food, we get the whole benefit. In addition, these 4 items have a lot of minerals and vitamins. In particular, they're rich in magnesium and potassium. Those 2, magnesium and potassium, are real team players, keeping many systems in our bodies in check. Magnesium, for example, again, in addition to all the other good things it does, helps reduce stress, stabilize our mood, and relax muscles. And potassium, again, another good team player, helps keep blood pressure low, improves nervous system function, and helps prevent muscle cramps. So put those all together, they help soothe us into a proper night's sleep. And the magical herbal remedy nutmeg is considered a relaxant, and it's used in herbal medicine for relieving anxiety and depression. So a little of this spice goes a long ways. If you eat too much, it's actually not good for you. So a sprinkle here and a sprinkle there. It's in my comfort oats. Now, with my personal favorite, cinnamon, the nutmeg, and all of the other wonderful soothing ingredients, is it any wonder why I call it my comfort oats? And should we perhaps rethink and say that oats are not just for breakfast anymore? Well, with that, I conclude my presentation this evening, but if you have any questions, please post them on our Facebook page or on YouTube, wherever. We will answer them during the Q&A. And remember, please do try this at home. And before I leave, I'd like to say goodbye in the language of my new country, which is Al-Wada, and introduce to you my next colleague and friend, Jennifer from Shreveport, Louisiana. Take it away, Jen. Al-Wada, everybody.
Wow, that was so informative. I'm so glad you added all that. I'm going to eat some oatmeal at night and maybe get a better night's sleep now. Well, hey, everybody, I'm Jen in Shreveport, Louisiana, and we're here today to talk about comfort food, of course. Now, comfort food normally comes in 2 genres, savory or sweet. And today I'm going to talk about grits or polenta, which can satisfy both those categories. So if you're a savory comfort food person, go for the grits. If you're a sweet comfort food person, you can also go for the grits. And I'm going to show you that in just a minute. So get my water going. So grits and polenta, I just want to let you know, are basically the same thing. There are a few differences. I know the Italians love the word polenta for their porridge, and Southerners, like in Louisiana, love grits to go with every single meal. They are so easy to make. I'm going to go over how to do that right now with you. You make them at home. Try to avoid buying the already made polenta in the grocery store. It's so much better for you to make it at home. So let's get started. So they all start, whether you're making a creamy grits, a savory grit, a thick polenta, or a sweet grit, that all starts with the same ratio, which is 3 parts liquid to 1 part of the grit or polenta. I'm going to use those words interchangeably because basically it's the same thing. They're all coarse ground. These are all stone ground that I highly recommend here. So it all starts with the basic ratio, 3 parts liquid, 1 part grit or polenta. And you can either do it with water, all water, or you can add the cream to it. Do half and half or a little cream. And when I'm saying cream, I'm referring to plant-based creams. So I'm going to start. I've got my water boiling here already because it takes the longest part of the presentation. We'll be waiting for the water to boil. So I've got water boiling, and I did put salt in this water. Now the grits are going to absorb all of that water, and I want it to absorb some of that salt. Not too much salt, just a little bit, but it helps add to the depth of the flavor. Now, if you are salt-free or low sodium, you can certainly leave that out. So anyway, I've got boiling water. I'm going to whisk in my grits. I'm using a white grit for this, which is what the Southerners truly love, a white grit. And I'm whisking it in, and it's very important to whisk it in because it will clump up. So it's very thin. I don't know if you can see in my pan, but very, very liquidy. I whisked it in, and now I'm going to turn it down a little bit to low. And we're going to let this cook. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen the movie My Cousin Vinny, one of my favorite movies, but there is a line in there of a man on a witness stand who says no respectful Southerner would ever make quick grits. But this grits actually can be done in about 5 minutes. If you want to go for the longer time period, which is 25 to 30 minutes, the flavor will develop a lot more. So anyway, I've got that all whisked in. I turned it down to simmer. I'm going to cover it for a few minutes, and we'll talk about the different grades. So grits will come, and you'll see in this particular brand, which is Bob's Red Mill, it says corn grits, also known as polenta. So they're basically, like I said, the same thing. Stone ground made from corn. This is a yellow grit, and it's just made from yellow corn. This is a white grit made from white corn, and Southerners do prefer the white, but basically the same thing technically, just milled a little differently. Now you'll also see, I did want to say that I found the white in the cereal aisle. It was right with the cereals, so with the oatmeal and things like that. And then the yellow is usually in the baking section of the grocery store. Very easy to find, but because these are milled stone ground and they're a whole grain, which means they left the outer shell, which has all that fiber and the wonderful nutrients in there. So it is definitely important to look for the stone ground and not the instant grits, which they have. The instant grits, which cook up in 5 minutes, they've taken all the wonderful nutrients and fiber out of there and left you with just the part that cooks up really quickly and soft, and it'll be a lot creamier, which maybe some people prefer. Just a little bit about cornmeal, which is also made from cornmeal. It is best for baking. You can kind of make a creamy grit with it, but it's better for baking, like your cornbread. Even some cakes and cookies can use that if you're a gluten-free. All right, let's check on how we're doing. Look at this. It's thickened up nicely already. Starting to thicken up. And so I'm making 2 kinds of grits today, and I'm going to do it from the same batch. So what I'm going to do is take half of this out and switch it into another pan. So we'll make it a sweet. We'll make our sweet first. And I'm going to put this on the back burner and cover it and let it continue to thicken up a little more for our savory. So this is what we've got already. You see how much, and that took no time at all. And I'm going to not cook it the full 5 minutes today because that'll take up a lot of time. But what I want to do, since I'm making a sweet porridge for dessert, is I'm going to add some milk to this. So this is coconut milk from the refrigerated section, not from the can. You can use the canned milk. It's a little bit thicker. And I'm going to add that in there. And this will keep it from getting really stiff and firm. I'm just going to stir that in with my whisk. And let that cook a little more to thicken up. And while that is thickening up, I'm going to check the savory. And it is thickening up back here as well. you'll see that that's a lot thicker. If you want to start with a creamy grit and not get a firm polenta type grit, you would start with 4 parts water or liquid to 1 part of grit. Okay, this one more time. All right, I'm going to show you the savory. The sweet is thickening up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to make a savory grit here. And so this would be like for a dinner grit, and you can put anything on top of this, anything that you would put on top of pasta or a potato. Awesome. What I have here is some nutritional yeast, some garlic powder, some onion powder, and some smoked paprika. I'm going to stir that in there and let it blend up. So we're kind of making a cheesy grit, which is what the nutritional yeast does. And while I'm doing this, I just want to share with you that the grits are loaded with great protein, fiber, but also a good amount of folate. About 1 cup of grits will have about 25% of your daily intake of folate, as well as iron, 8% of your iron requirements for the day. So look at this. We've got, now this is a little grainier, which probably does not show up on the camera as well as in person. I would let it cook longer. And actually for a nice savory grit, I probably would let it cook a lot longer, like maybe 25, 30 minutes. I would keep it covered and about every 5 to 10 minutes, go in there and give it a stir to keep it from sticking. But the beauty of this is for a savory grit, you can eat it as is. And if you are transitioning from a standard American diet to a vegan diet, and you're looking for your traditional comfort food grits, in the South, they do add a lot of butter, but there is the earth balance. You could add some earth balance margarine to it while you're transitioning out of the standard American diet, and just keep backing off on that fat, and you'll really appreciate the grits and be able to taste them a lot better too. There is also vegan cheeses that you can stir in there if you need to, or if you're serving it to people who won't eat it without a cheese in there. They really won't be able to tell the difference. But a great way to serve this if you're having friends over is to put out a tray. I raided my refrigerator. You can put out a tray of all these great vegetables and tofu. I think I'm going to put some greens here. I have some beet greens and some kale. Put this on my dish. Oh, caramelized onions. Yeah, I had some of those in the fridge. And everyone, if you're doing this at a dinner party, everybody can make their own, put their own together. It's really awesome to do. Barbecue tofu that we had some leftovers, put some of that on there. Ooh, and roasted cauliflower and Brussels sprouts, and of course some roasted tomato too. So that is a really delicious, healthy, comfort food, savory dish. Now let's finish up our dessert or breakfast. You can do this for breakfast or dessert. Okay. So we've got a nice and creamy grit going on here. I'm going to add, to sweeten it up, some raisins. That's one of my favorite sweeteners to use especially when I'm making my oatmeal or grits. And I want them sweet. And I also discovered the other day, I made a dessert for a friend that used this condensed coconut milk. It is sweetened with some sugar, but it's really good. I'm going to put a little bit of that in there. It was so awesome. I was making grits right after that and had extra, and I thought, well, why not try it? And it was good. You can put anything in your grits. Stir that in. Now, if this had about 5 more minutes to cook, really, it would be a lot thicker, but let's pour it in the bowl. And I'm going to top it with some great Louisiana blueberries from last season. They're from my freezer. I have some blanched almonds on top. I'm going to put a little flaxseed on there. Get some omega-3s. It's ground flaxseed. And then pour it with a little bit of maple syrup on top. And there is a great sweet comfort food made from grits. And I wanted to show you one more thing. Now the savory grits, if you let them cool down, they will get firm. So I have made, and this is traditionally what you think of as polenta. So I poured some into a loaf pan and I ended up with this. And what I did then was I sliced it and I broiled it. And that would be great with if you put some bruschetta on top and serve it as a bruschetta with your dinner as an appetizer or with your meal. These guys are sticking. Caramelized onions. That on there too. Caramelized onions would be great on here as well. I have also taken some, and I do this quite often, and poured it into a sheet pan and made a thin layer of polenta. And what I do with this is I will slice it and make it fit my lasagna pan. And I will put a layer in the lasagna pan and cover it with roasted veggies and put some fat-free marinara sauce on top of that, and then put another layer of polenta on top of that, and you have a delicious lasagna. And one other thing that I did with it, especially if you're gluten-free and you love your croutons, is you can take them and cut up the ones you put in the loaf pan and bake them and make some wonderful croutons from that. So I hope you can see how easy grits are to make at home, and definitely avoid those instant grits that are lacking all the nutrients that are in the whole stone ground grit, and enjoy your comfort food, whether you're a savory person or a sweet person. And there's often times when I can't decide if I'm a savory or a sweet gal. So luckily the grits satisfy all of that. Okay, so my presentation is done, and now I'm going to pass you off to my friend Angelita, who's in South Carolina, and she's going to make you some really neat pancakes.
Hey, Jennifer, thank you. Oh my gosh, I'd never had sweet grits, and so I'm definitely going to try that. So my name is Angelita. Welcome, bienvenidos. I'm going to do this bilingual because I invited a few Spanish-speaking friends of mine. So what I'm making is a lemon lavender tofu pancake. And I created this recipe because I love pancakes, but I also wanted some protein in it and something that kept me a little bit fuller throughout the day because of the type of work that I do. Sometimes I don't get to eat lunch until really, really late in the afternoon. So the recipe is in the notes. And then you can feel free to contact me on the media that's coming across the bottom on my website, my Facebook page, or my Instagram. So what we're going to need is organic pancake mix. Now you can use any organic pancake mix. Just read the ingredients and make sure that there's no dairy and there's no eggs in there. And then you're also going to need some soft tofu or firm tofu. And then just a little correction on the water. You're going to need 1.5 cups, not half a cup. That was a typo, so that's my fault. And you're going to need some lemon juice, some lemon zest, and you're going to need food grade lavender. And just follow the instructions. So I made this ahead of time because I had to blend it and I have to let the dough sit for a little bit, or the pancake mixture sit for a little bit, and then it takes the pancakes a little bit longer to cook because it does have the tofu and we want it to cook slowly for them to rise. Lo que estoy haciendo son unos pancakes de lavanda y limón, y la receta está en las notas. Si tienen cualquier pregunta, por favor, mándenme el mensaje por mi website, por Instagram o por el Facebook. Van a ocupar harina preparada para pancakes. Nomás aseguren que no tenga nada de leche y que no tenga nada de huevo. También van a ocupar lavanda, que es para consumir. Van a necesitar limón rallado y jugo de limón, también miel de maple. Y hice la masa. Ya la hice porque tiene que sentarse unos 5 o 10 minutos, y luego también dura tiempo para poder hacer los pancakes. No es igual como el resto porque lleva el tofu y va a demorar un tiempo largo para cocinarlo, como 5 o 10 minutos. So that's what I'm doing right now, is I am cooking the pancakes, and I have to bring it to you guys so you can see. See how thick they are? And there's 8 grams of protein and 1 serving of tofu. So this is a wonderful way to get sneak some protein into your pancakes and give it to your children. The comfort part of this for me is I love, love, love pancakes. I remember one time my husband's like, you want to go out for breakfast? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, well, where do you want to go? And I'm like, oh, I'm not picky. I go, just as long as they serve pancakes. So I think he named a few places, but yeah, I am very picky. So I'd rather just make them at home. The good thing about these is that you can make a huge batch, lay them out on a kitchen towel, let them cool completely, and then layer in between parchment paper, and you can freeze them. They freeze beautifully. Just take them out the night before, leave them in the fridge, and then you just put them in your toaster oven and put it on the lightest toast, and it's like you just made them. They're absolutely delicious. So here, this one's almost done. And this is what the dough looks like. It's or the batter. It's a little bit thicker than the normal batter. I have not tried it in the waffle iron because I have a Belgian waffle iron, so I don't think it would work. But if you have just a regular flat iron, I think that would probably work pretty well. And you can make these pancakes as big as you want or as small as you want. I probably end up getting about 8 of them about this big. Okay, so once they're done and you serve them up, this is what they look like. And then this is the syrup that I made. I just created that this morning, and I'll put that in the notes. But I crystallized some fresh organic lemon. Please make sure you're using organic lemon when you're getting the zest. And I used maple syrup in that and just let it cook slowly, and it crystallized them beautifully. And then I added a little bit of the lavender to the syrup to infuse it. And these are not only wonderful for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, they're also really good for brunch. And then, you know, Mother's Day is coming up, so you might want to surprise mom or grandma, your wife, your girlfriend. I mean, they don't necessarily have to be a mama. And bring them breakfast in bed. Hint, hint. So anyway, so this is my comfort food. And see, I just poured this one when I started talking, and it's still not ready to flip. So like I said, it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to get that done. So I make a big batch of these. I keep them in the freezer, and they're easy access. And like one of the presenters said earlier, if you cook in a batch, in big batches, it does make it a lot easier for you to stay with this way of eating, and for you to be able to not fall for binge eating or grabbing something that's not healthy for you. So I hope you try these. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, and I really appreciate it. So now I'm going to pass this on to Nancy, who's going to show you another version of pancakes, because let's face it, pancakes are life. Take it away, Nancy.
Hi, Aunt Lisa. Thank you very much. And your pancakes look absolutely gorgeous. So I'm not going to, mine aren't nearly as gorgeous, but I hope they taste as good. Hi, I'm Nancy Manifold, and I am making pancakes today. I'm making a lemon and blueberry pancake. And I am a born and bred Canadian, so I was raised on pancakes. I absolutely love pancakes. But the pancakes, my childhood, which is probably similar to most people watching, were made from white flour, which have virtually no fiber, eggs, milk, and white sugar, which definitely have no fiber in them. But I loved them. I absolutely loved them, and my mom would make them for us when we were kids. And just as my mom made them for us, I made them for my kids. And they love them as well. But the funny thing is that my husband and I started to notice that once the kids were finished their pancakes, we could almost predict to the minute when the sugar hit them, and they would just be bouncing off the walls. So what I'm offering you today is pancakes, but pancakes with a difference in that they are high in fiber, so that they won't turn your kids into human pinball machines. And they are also delicious, because there's no point in me saying, look, try these pancakes because they're high in fiber. The key bit of any pancake is it's got to taste delicious. And my kids love these. As soon as I make them, they absolutely devour them. So what I like to do is take you through them and just show you how to make them, okay? The recipe is on Physicians Committee website, and I imagine it's a fairly popular recipe. So we start with oat flour. So oats are very high in soluble fiber, and you don't need to, I've got a food processor over here, you don't need to buy oat flour. You can just buy oats, put them in the food processor and blitz it, and within seconds you've got really good oat flour. So I have 2 cups plus 2 tablespoons of oat flour here, so I'm going to put that in. Now, oat flour is high in fiber, but the type of fiber it's a good source of is something called soluble fiber. And what soluble fiber does is it binds to cholesterol in our gut and stops that cholesterol being reabsorbed into the blood further down the gut. So it's actually acknowledged as a very heart-healthy ingredient, and it's very good at lowering cholesterol. So there you go. So I have the oat flour there, and some rolled oats, 1/3 cup of rolled oats. And the reason that foods high in fiber don't cause a sugar rush is because the fiber is very difficult for your gut to break down, and which means that the carbohydrate that is in high fiber foods is released slowly and absorbed gradually into the blood. And that gives a nice steady supply of glucose, which is a very important food for us, but it gives a nice steady supply of glucose for us, which keeps us going all morning, and keeps us feeling full all morning because of the fiber, as opposed to the pancakes of old with loads of maple syrup on it, which sort of hit your bloodstream like that, and then you couldn't even see your kids. They were moving so fast. And then the next thing in here is 1 tablespoon of ground chia seed. Now, chia seed is fantastic as an egg replacer. So what chia seed does is it acts as a binder in this recipe, and as I say, replaces the egg. The other thing about chia seed is it's also very high in fiber. It's also a good source of omega-3 fatty acids, which are important for the health of your heart, your brain, your eyes, everything. Okay, so that's the chia seeds. And now I have the baking powder. So it's 1 tablespoon of baking powder. I'm putting that in. And 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, just a tiny bit of salt. Okay, so those are the dry ingredients, and I'm going to mix those up. The other reason these pancakes are high in fiber is because I'm using berries, and my berry of choice is blueberries. Okay, so I've mixed that up. That's the dry ingredients. Now for the wet ingredients, I have 2 cups of plant milk. Now the recipe calls for vanilla plant milk. I live in England, and in England I can't find a vanilla plant milk that I like. So I quite like soy milk. It's high in protein. It's also slightly higher in fat, just naturally. So it depends what you want from your plant milk, but I quite like this one. And I have no shares in the company, but I get something called Alpro soy because it also has iodine added. So it's a good source of iodine. So I have that. I've added a teaspoon of vanilla to that to match the vanilla plant milk. And one of the secret ingredients in this is lemon zest. And that's the bit that my kids really like because you can taste it and it tastes really nice. So that's the zest, pretty much 1 lemon. And then 1.5 teaspoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice. So I'm just putting that in. And again, with the lemon zest, this gives a really nice flavor to it. And Forgot to get a fork out, so I'll get a fork out. I'm going to mix this up. Okay. Now what you do is make a bit of a well in the middle and add the wet to the dry. Now, every time I make pancakes, I can hear my mother telling me not to mix it too much or you'll lose the air bubbles and you'll end up with flat pancakes. Which, you know, the funny thing is with comfort foods, it's not just the food. It's partly the food, but it's the whole thing. We have comfort foods because we remember who made them for us, who, you know, where we had it. It's associated with other things. And for me, whenever I make pancakes, my mom is sitting on my shoulder, you know, telling me not to stir it too much. So there you go. And you can still, you know, and that's part of the reason some people, I think, are reluctant to change their eating habits to a plant-based. But you can still have that even with plant-based. You know, for example, you can veganize recipes. This pancake recipe is gorgeous and it's veganized, and I still have all the memories of my mom when I make it. But I'm making a slightly healthier version. And who knows, maybe when my kids are cooking one day, I'll be sitting on their shoulder talking to them. But that's a bit of a scary thought for them, I think. So what I'm adding to this now is blueberries. So what I've done is I've taken frozen blueberries. I'm a big fan of frozen fruit and vegetables. I'm also a big fan of fresh, don't get me wrong. But one of the benefits of frozen, I don't know if you can see it, is when I've thawed this in the microwave, it's a couple of blueberries, and it forms like a compote, and it's really nice because it's very sweet, but it's natural sugar in the fruit, which is very good for you. So I'll put that there, and I'm going to mix this up, and you get a nice colorful blue batter, okay? And what I would suggest with these pancakes, because the oat flour is a little bit heavier than white flour that you may be used to cooking with, what I would suggest is making smaller pancakes. I'm just turning this on here. Making smaller pancakes, sort of, I'd say just a small scoop, about a third of a cup to half a cup per scoop, and then flattening it out a little bit with the back of a spoon to get it flatter. So I'm just going to go through the beginning of cooking these pancakes, but I've already made some to show you. But the point of showing you this is I've got some oil in here, and what you can do is rather than pouring a whole load of oil in there, is just take a paper towel and just give it the easiest little, just a tiny bit of a wipe there. This is actually a non-stick pan, so I don't need it at all, but it's just for the sake of showing. And then take just a small scoop and putting it in there, okay? Now, I have made some in advance because I think anybody who has made pancakes knows the curse of the first pancake. So I didn't want to do this show and have to show you the first pancake because they never turn out right. Doesn't matter if they're plant-based or not. It's well known about the first pancake. So I'm going to leave that for a minute. I'll put the lid on. I find if I put the lid on, it bubbles a bit better. But you don't need to wait for that because what I have here is some pancakes that I made earlier, and I also have thawed some more blueberries, okay? So you can make pancakes as healthy as you want, but if you drown them in maple syrup or, pancake syrup, you're still going to get that sugar rush. So what I find is thawing out, heating out, thawing out and heating up blueberries makes them incredibly sweet. As I say, like a compote, but it's got all of the antioxidants, all of the fiber, and all of the health benefits of blueberries. And it's nice and sweet. And just a tiny drizzle of maple syrup, because there is no denying the fact that I'm Canadian, so I have to have some maple syrup in there somewhere. And there we go, with an absolutely delicious blueberry pancake recipe with lemon blueberry pancakes. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I promise you, if you try them, your kids will love them. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I'd like to introduce Karen Osborne, who is in Austin, Texas. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Those are delicious. Everyone really enjoys those pancakes whenever I make them in a class. I get to talk to you today about everybody's childhood favorite, macaroni and cheese. And people grow up with it maybe because it is inexpensive, maybe because it's quick for busy parents. It's easy for college students to prepare. But the first written recipe of macaroni and cheese seems to have been from the 13th or 14th century in Italy. Then go forward a few centuries, and it said that Thomas Jefferson and his chef experienced macaroni and cheese in Paris and brought it back to the United States. And then the first written recipe in the United States was said to be in a cookbook in from 1824 called the Virginia Housewife. So the recipe had 3 ingredients. It was macaroni, cheese, and butter, and it was layered and then baked in a hot oven. That was it. Then in forward a little bit, in 1937, macaroni and cheese was packaged for convenience, and that was popular in the Depression because people could make a meal for 4 people in 9 minutes for 19 cents. And then it became more popular in World War II because you could buy 2 boxes with 1 food rationing stamp. And also they fed it to the soldiers, and it gave them a taste of home. So comfort food. And I have 2 kids, they're grown. But my kids enjoyed macaroni and cheese, even though one was allergic to milk and dairy, and the other one was lactose intolerant. So from more than 20 years ago, we were making macaroni and cheese, just a healthier version. And their friends would come over and eat the macaroni and cheese, not knowing the difference. What we used was a cashew cheese sauce. So it was all cashews, water, nutritional yeast, lemon juice, and salt. How easy is that? We just blend it smooth and then put the pasta in a pan and heat it with the sauce. But I've lightened it up. There's tons of cheese sauces, as you've seen already in this show. But I am using potatoes and carrots that I have steamed. So the macaroni and cheese in a box, I don't know what, what's in that cheese. But if you made the baked macaroni and cheese, even with real cheese, still not that healthy. The cheese is full of saturated fat, and that's been associated with heart disease, Alzheimer's, some increased risk of some types of cancer. People can be lactose intolerant or allergic to dairy, and then you get stomach issues and you're not absorbing any of the nutrients you're taking in. So we've just healthified it. And this is so easy. When my kids were young, we used a gluten-free pasta called tinkyada, and that's still around today, and it's very good. It looks like this. It's available online and in certain stores. And this is a brown rice pasta, but it's not mushy like regular rice pasta. Trader Joe's has the same, exact same thing. That it's just their own store brand, and it's the same texture, flavor. You can get whole grain pastas. I have some buckwheat pasta, which is really good. Then what was not widely available when my kids were little were the bean pastas. So we have red lentil pasta. I have chickpea pasta. And what I'm using today is green lentil pasta. So pasta, even though it's a processed food, it's not going to spike your blood sugar like if you were to eat a bread, like a white bread made out of processed flour. Because it's dense and you need to chew it, and it's not going to release all the sugars into your bloodstream really fast. And then you say, well, what about calcium? You need dairy for calcium for your bones. Well, no. It's been studied and it's been shown that dairy products do not prevent fractures. And actually, plant-based calcium is a lot more bioavailable than dairy. So it's for your strong bones, you need a lot more than calcium. So you need plant-based protein, and then this protein matrix comes out when you stress your bones, and it attracts all these minerals. So you want to be providing the minerals with fruits and vegetables, right? So I'm using the potatoes and the carrots. So just steamed, and they are, like, the potatoes are full of potassium, which actually decreases the calcium loss from your body and increases the production of bone. The carrots, beta carotene, is necessary for the production of bone cells, those healthy bone building cells. They also have vitamin C, as well as the potatoes, which is necessary for collagen, which is that connective tissue that attracts the minerals and hardens the bone. And a lemon juice I'm going to add. This is for flavor. I'm just putting everything into the blender. Gives it that little tartness like cheese, and it also provides more vitamin C. Then the nutritional yeast gives it that cheesy flavor. Now the recipe is just a guide. You can put more of anything in it that you want, and I'm just doing a basic recipe. I have onion powder and garlic granules. You could use garlic powder to give it some flavor. And then I'm going to put in a little salt. And if you're not using salt, you can leave it out. And one more ingredient, before I put the water in, I'm putting hemp seeds in. So we're gonna put the water in. I'm using 1.5 cups to start with, the filtered water. And we're gonna blend it all smooth. But if you're eating it right now, this should be enough. It really depends on how long ago you steamed your potatoes, how much water is left in the potatoes. If you're gonna put it in the refrigerator, it thickens up. So you might want to thin it out with some more water in a minute. But this has been refrigerated, but you can see it's still a creamy cheese sauce. But if you're going to eat it now, you really don't have to put any kind of fat in it. But I'm putting hemp seeds in. It actually makes it a little bit more creamy. But if you don't put some kind of fat in, you could use cashews. Hemp seeds are just a really good source of plant-based protein and omega-3s. And if you don't put a little fat in there, when you refrigerate it, the starch changes. It becomes a resistant starch, and you get like the mouthfeel of cheese flavored mashed potatoes. So that's not a bad thing, but it's not good to put on your macaroni and cheese. So we're just going to blend this smooth. And that's all it takes. And I have prepared the green lentil pasta because I wanted the macaroni, the elbow shape for my macaroni and cheese, but any shape will do. If you don't want to use pasta, you can do spiralize some zucchini. You can buy it already spiralized. It's called zoodles. You could also use spaghetti squash, but I'm just going to pour the sauce into my macaroni and stir it up. Now this is just the basic recipe. You can make it gourmet. You can add broccoli. You could add mushrooms. You could add tomatoes. You can add anything you desire. You can bake it, but the potatoes were hot. The sauce is hot right now. The noodles were just made, so actually you can eat it just like this. But one more thing, if you want a topping on it, the topping is usually like buttered breadcrumbs or buttered crackers. And what I did, I took whole buckwheat groats and I soaked them overnight in salt water and dried dill, and that gives it this buttery flavor. And then I put it on a parchment paper lined cookie sheet and baked it at 350. Like for the first 21 minutes, you want to stir it just move it around about every 7 minutes. And then if it's not crispy enough, you can see it's crunchy. If it's not crispy enough by 21 minutes, you can leave it in another 7 minutes, but stir it every couple minutes and check it to make sure it's not burning. So I'm just going to put my topping on my macaroni. And I am ready to enjoy the rest of the show. So thanks for watching. And now we're going to send it over to Sarah Yasha'Allah in Norfolk, Virginia. And she's going to be showing you a healthy pizza. Take it away, Sarah.
Hello, thank you, Karen. I think I have something that you could also put on top of that mac and cheese you just made. So you might have noticed that each of our comfort foods had a common thread. So many of them had cheese. So we love cheese. And you've seen some cheese sauces that you can add in the place of other cheeses. And I'm going to show you another cheese alternative as well. So again, I'm Sarah. I'm from Norfolk, Virginia. I'm also the owner of Mind's Own Meals, where I offer plant-based nutrition and wellness classes. I've been a Food for Life instructor since 2014, but this is my first time cooking with so many cooks in the kitchen. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm excited, and I can't wait to show you this quick and easy plant-based pizza. So as everyone has stated, the recipe, of course, you'll be able to find online. I'm sure there's a link somewhere in the chat moving or the comments. And we're going to start with a plant-based Parmesan. So this, of course, you've seen cashews already in our cheese sauce. So we have a very similar recipe here. We're just going to leave out all the wet ingredients. So we're going to start with a 1/4 cup of cashews. And you can replace this with your favorite nut, maybe almonds or hazelnut. But cashews and almonds are a little bit more neutral. So I'm going to add that to my food processor, which is kind of complex here. And then you've also seen a lot of recipes with nutritional yeast. And throughout the program, we talked about different ways that you can replace cheese. Even if you just sprinkle it on top, it just adds that cheesy flavor that you might crave. So we're going to add 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. And this is just our base. You can add any seasonings that you like, that you think you'll like, but we're going to add onion powder, garlic powder, and a little bit of sea salt. That's sticking to the plate. All right. So we're going to pulse this or blend until it's about the consistency of regular Parmesan cheese. I tested this before I started, but I always have a backup. So you'll pulse it, it'll come down to almost like grains of sand. And we're going to use this later on to top our pizza. So what I like about this easy plant-based pizza is it's easy, it's quick, it's so simple that even children can do it. So at my house, when we're preparing for our pizza night, I just go ahead and chop up all our favorite veggies. Today we're going to use spinach, mushrooms, onions, green peppers, pineapple olives, and a couple of other additions that we're going to add for flavor later on. All right. And to start, you want to pick out your favorite base. And it could be a tortilla. So I'm using a whole wheat tortilla. You could use a pita bread. You could use a bagel. I was thinking even a matzo cracker or one of those wasa thins, something like that, that you can top with any sauce and any vegetable so that it will still be firm enough to maintain, as you're eating it. And if that doesn't work, you just fold it over and eat that way. So for our sauce, I'm going to use tomato paste. And because this is quick and easy, I'm just going to scoop it up and throw it on. But if you have more time, you can season it. You can even create your own pizza sauce. You can add water to it. I chose a paste because I'm going to add fresh ingredients and I'm going to add spinach. So the spinach and the other ingredients will cook down and add some moisture to your crust. So you just spread it along your crust and be sure to take it out as far to the edges as you like. It can kind of help with decreasing the burning along the edges too. So one thing about pizza is, of course, it's the ultimate comfort food. And usually when you get it, it is covered with oil if you choose a non-plant-based variety. And so this recipe has very, very minimal oil, except what's in our tortilla that I'm using and what's in the cashews. The other thing I like is you can customize this to any variety you like based on what your favorite toppings are. And you don't have to pay extra for that. So I'm going to start with fresh spinach. And it's going to spread it around. I also like to think of these as my rainbow pizza because we try to incorporate as many different colors as we can. So you know you're getting all of those extra vitamins and phytonutrients that help our bodies and build the immune system. I love mushrooms, so I would normally use a whole lot, but just for today, I'm just going to add a few. All right. Then we're going to add our onion. And once again, I'm using red onion, but you could use yellow or white onion. And if you want to take this quick pizza and make it a gourmet pizza, there are so many other toppings that you can add and so many different things you can do ahead of time. Like you might want to saute your vegetables first or roast them and then top your pizza. And if you do that, you can upgrade from tomato sauce to pizza sauce or even from tomato paste to a sauce instead. So most of the moisture will cook out while you are sauteing your vegetables. So this is more of a traditional veggie pizza, except when I add these pineapples in that give it a special kick. And you could leave it out, or you could experiment with something like, I don't know, maybe peaches would be good. And last but not least is our olives. And here's another opportunity to really add variety because there are so many different types of olives that you can use in your recipe. So here's our basic pizza. We're going to add on just a few more toppings. From here, however, if you want to stop here and put this in the oven, you go about 8 to 10 minutes in the oven. But I'm going to add some things before I put it in the oven. So just to make it a little bit more gourmet and still keep it a weeknight meal or an after-school snack. So we're going to add some Italian seasoning. Just sprinkle that on. And of course, don't want to leave out that Parmesan cheese we just made. I'll sprinkle that on as well. So this is something you can add before baking, you can add it after baking, or you can add it before and after baking, depending on how much you want to use. Alrighty, so you would pop this in the oven for about 8 to 10 minutes. Keep a very close eye on it, particularly if you're using a tortilla, because it will burn rather quickly around the edges. So you can kind of eat this pizza feeling guilt-free. There's not that cheese that we've been seeing throughout, not the same cheese that we would normally turn to. Throughout our program, though, we have seen cheese a lot, and traditionally, cheese itself is a comfort food. People just get hunks of it and put it on crackers. And so the cheese sauces that were shown earlier, they can also be added to this pizza. And you can get crackers in that if you want. But it's great to have these different alternatives to consider because we want to overcome that cheese addiction. And so cheese is fattening, and we know it. We know it's also tasty. As Mark mentioned earlier, though, we want something that tastes like what we used to have. So the Parmesan and some of the cheese sauces that you've seen today, they're great alternatives to start with. So 8 to 10 minutes have passed, and voila, we have our veggie pizza. From here, You can add a few other things you like. I have some fresh basil that I'm gonna just shred and cover. You could also add fresh arugula. You could add fresh tomatoes. So all of these ingredients, they're all vegetables. And I did mention that this is something my children enjoy. And I think you'll be surprised that when you put something on a crust and you add a little sauce, most people will agree that it is a delicious pizza. You might have to adjust to not having cheese if you decide not to add one of the cheese alternatives. But even without those, this is a great way to enjoy pizza. Here we go, one more time. And I'm going to send you guys over to Cody, who's in Omaha, Nebraska, and she's going to show you her take on pizza. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cody Stubbe. Thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen today. I am in Omaha, Nebraska, and I am a registered nurse and a nursing instructor, and I'm a Food for Life instructor. And so welcome to my home. So today I'm going to show you how to make my take on pizza, and I'm going to do hummus pizza. Now, pizza is a big hit at my house. You know, I got the 3 little girls. I got Nora, who's 4, Ella, who's 9, and Ava, who is 12. And, you know, kids are very creative. And so this is a really fun way to let those creative juices flow. So every Friday night we have homemade pizza night, and hummus is one of the hits for one of our sauces. We also do a tomato sauce, but so it's either one or the other around my house, and they just love it. So today I'm just going to show you a very basic hummus recipe, and you're just going to have to taste it and kind of add to it with what you want. So for today, you're gonna need a can of garbanzo beans or chickpeas, and you want to get it with no salt added. And what you do is you drain off the juice, and the juice is called aquafaba. I'm sure you've heard us talk about that before. So we do save this juice, and we're gonna use it to kind of help maybe thin this down a little bit. So you'll see that here in just a minute. So I'm gonna dump 1 can in. And of course, chickpeas or garbanzo beans, they're a legume, so they're very healthy for you. Got great plant-based protein in there, right? It's got great source of iron and calcium. So you're going to add that in here. We're also going to add in 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. You could use fresh garlic as well. And you can add more if you like as well, or less. It kind of depends on what kind of flavor. If you like garlic, add some more. If you don't, just omit it. That's okay. You can do that. All right. We're also going to add a teaspoon of tahini. And again, that's something you don't need to add, but we just do it. It's a nice little source of extra calcium. Now, one fun thing you could add in here is a roasted red pepper. So I have a little jar of these in there in water, and I didn't have my fresh spoon, so I'm going to use my clean fingers and just grab a couple here. And what's fun is this will kind of make it a little bit more of an orange color. And as you know, kids like different colors, so we like to use more of the vibrant colors. All right, so I'm going to put the lid on here. I'm just going to go ahead, knowing that I'm going to have to put some of this in. I'm just going to pour a little bit in already. And turn it on. Then I probably need to stir it down just a little bit, and you want a pretty smooth consistency so it will spread nicely on your crust. And then you can also taste it. So if you want more of a little bit of a cheesy flavor to it, you could add some nutritional yeast into this. You could add a little bit of lemon juice in there as well. Lemon juice is great because it has vitamin C. And vitamin C, if you have that along with something that has iron in it, such as your garbanzo beans, it will help with that iron absorption into your body like you need. So I'm going to turn it on one more time here. Okay, so that looks pretty smooth. Let me show you what it looks like. And it smells really good. All right, so I'm just going to take some of this. Now I have, it's just a whole wheat flatbread. We found that these work really great for pizzas, so we love it. This one's pretty firm, so I can just actually even hold this up here so you can see me do this. You're just going to take that hummus and you're just going to spread it around. And you can kind of see a little bit of the red pepper in there. So that's pretty fun. You don't need a very thick layer, just a nice, smooth, even layer. I'm going to put this on my baking sheet. I like to use the silicone mat. I'm going to set it right down. All right. So now what I'm going to do is start putting my toppings on here. Now again, with kids, you want to get creative. You want to get very colorful. My girls love everything. They love mushrooms. They love red peppers, green peppers, black olives, green olives. They love red cabbage, and it's beautiful. And Nora, my youngest one, she always tries to make a rainbow. She also does like flower patterns, and so it's just so much fun to see what they come up with. We also like to put kale on here. So if you got kale, just wash it up and chop it up, and then you can kind of sprinkle it on there. It works really well. So for today's, I'm just going to throw on some mushrooms. Mushrooms have good vitamin D. I'm just going to throw them on here. I won't get too fancy today. I have one that's all done that I can show you that's pretty cute. And you can just sprinkle everything else. And if you can believe it, my middle daughter, Ella, she absolutely loves onions. And I think that is just awesome. So my other two aren't as big of fans of them. And my husband and I, of course, love onions. So it's fun to have another daughter that loves them too. So we always throw a lot of onions on to ours. So here's that red pepper. And again, the variety of colors that you eat, the different antioxidants that you're going to get, and it's going to benefit your health. Okay, so here are my onions. Like I said, I like a lot of them. So my pizza always has a lot of onions. So good. All right, and then we got some black olives. I'm going to sprinkle those on. Okay, and then last, I'm going to give it a couple shakes of Italian seasoning. I like a lot of Italian seasoning too. Okay, so this is going to go in the oven. It's going to be preheated at 375 for about 10 minutes. And I'll show you the finished product. This one turned out a little bit prettier than this one. So here you go. And I wish I had some of Sarai's Parmesan to sprinkle on top of that, because that would really add to it. So here you go, and this is what it looks like. I'm excited to eat this. I am starving right now, so I'm going to be chowing down here pretty soon, you guys. You got to try this. And feel free to tweak the recipe to your liking. It's great. So thank you for joining me. I'm going to hand it on over to Susanna Dickman in Evansville, Indiana. Bye.
Thanks, Cody. Wow. So far, the recipes have been so great. I'm going to have to start this week at the beginning and trying to make each one. Well, welcome. I'm Susanna Dickman, and I'm from Evansville, Indiana. And today I'm going to make you one of the comfort foods that has been a favorite of my family's for years, and that is spaghetti pie. Now here, I'll show you my spaghetti pie that I made yesterday. And you can see, of course, I have 3 guys in the house, and they had to test it out to make sure that it tasted okay. But let me tell you a little bit about spaghetti pie. When my husband and I were in college, you know, we were young, we didn't have a lot of money, and spaghetti was a go-to cheap meal, just some marinara sauce and some pasta. After a while, though, we kind of became sick of it, and, you know, it was just boring. I found a recipe for spaghetti pie, and when my kids were born, of course, it wasn't plant-based, but we would make it instead of just the plain pasta. Once we became plant-based, and we have been plant-based for about 10 years now, spaghetti pie was something that I kind of forgot about. But in the recent couple of years, I started making it again, and I had to find, first of all, the cheese sauce. So today you've seen a lot of great cheese sauces so far in this class. Today I'm going to make one with 3 simple ingredients: cauliflower, oat milk, and I'm going to use oat milk because it's a little bit thicker and has more of a sweeter taste, but it really is going to make the cauliflower and garlic really just taste awesome in this pie. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have a flax egg here, and in order to make a flax egg, first I have some flax seed. I usually like to buy the flax seed whole, and then I will just grind it in my blender. And then I like to keep a bag of this in the freezer because, you know, it will spoil if you leave it in the fridge or if you leave it on the counter. So I like to keep a bag in the freezer so that when I need it as an egg replacement, I've got it. So I did put some water in here before we started, but I added a little bit more. You can see the consistency is very similar to an egg. So once I've got that, I went ahead and cooked my pasta, and I chose to use a spaghetti pasta. You could make this with a linguine, you can use penna, you can really use any kind of pasta. I'm going to pour on my flax egg, and then I am just going to mix it up so that it incorporates throughout my pasta. And this is going to keep my pasta together. As I said, when I made this before, I would use an egg to do this, but now I'm going to use the flax egg. And you know, flax is very good for us with the omega-3s. So it's a nice addition if you need an egg replacement. This recipe too is something that you can change, you can add to it. One thing that I'm going to add is mushrooms. And because I'm only going to bake this for about 30 to 40 minutes, I go ahead and pre-cook my mushrooms. So what I put in here, I put some onions and I saute those without any water, with just a little bit of water without any oil. And then I chopped up some mushrooms really fine and then put those in. Now, when I make this at other times, I'll just go in my fridge and see what kind of vegetables I have. If I have carrots, I'll chop those up real little. Broccoli, I will slice up the broccoli. Red peppers, even zucchini, just to add a layer of vegetables. I like to always include mushrooms because, first of all, we know how good they are for us. And second of all, they really are a good meat replacement. They have the texture for meat. So this was about 8 ounces of mushrooms, and this is my first layer. I want to mention real quickly, I know the discussion on Facebook, someone had asked about recommendations for a pan where you do not need to use oil, and this is my scan pan. So you might want to look it up because I cook everything in here and I do not use oil and things don't stick. So if you're interested in learning about a good pan. I've got 2 layers so far. I've got my spaghetti and I've got my mushrooms, and now I'm going to make my cheese sauce. Now, couple of just easy, helpful hints on this. The recipe calls for a medium cauliflower, and I didn't have any cauliflower today or the other day in my fridge. I always keep a bag of rice cauliflower. So I just took that bag out. I mixed it with a little vegetable broth and some fresh garlic. You can see garlic in there, whole garlic, a little bit of salt and pepper. And then you want to put this on a cookie sheet and bake it for about 10 to 15 minutes. You want, you can see some black pieces in there. It's okay if it gets a little charred. You want to roast the cauliflower because that just brings out the flavor. But go ahead and use the rice if you don't have a cauliflower handy. So I'm going to put that in my blender. along with, I probably use 5 cloves of garlic just because, oh my gosh, I love garlic. I have to tell you, before COVID and all the mask wearing, I was in the grocery store and someone, man made a comment to his wife, "Do you smell garlic?" And I know it was me because I just love garlic. But again, for this recipe, I use oat milk. Oat milk has a little bit more sugar, natural sugars, and it just, to me, I've tried soy or other milks with this, but I like to use the oat milk, and that's about 3/4 cups. So I am going to blend this. All right. You could let it go a little bit, maybe a couple minutes more, but this is just fine. So this is going to be my cheese layer. It's really thick, but that's how you want it. You want it to be thick. And I'm just going to make sure that it is all over my pie. I think I'm going to take this spatula instead. This is a great cheese sauce. It's very versatile. I will sometimes add more water to thin it out if I want to use it for something else. I've also used this cheese sauce in my lasagna. And it's a great way for children to get them to eat cauliflower. I know my son's cauliflower is just a bit too strong for them, and they really don't like it plain or cooked. But when I have it in here, they love the spaghetti pies. So they're going to be getting some good antioxidants in their cauliflower. Okay. The last thing I'm going to add is some marinara sauce. And again, sometimes I love to just put a whole, tomato paste, tomato sauce, whole tomatoes and spices in a crock pot and let it cook all day and have a great marinara sauce. Or you can just find a really good no oil marinara sauce that you like. I'm going to put about half of the jar on here, and I always save the rest of the sauce to add on top when it's done cooking because it's just so good to do that. But this is my spaghetti pie. As I said, my family, my sons were very excited when we came up with this alternative because they kind of missed this. This was something that we made often. Oops, I dropped my spoon a little bit. Let me go ahead. I'm going to sprinkle some nutritional yeast, but again, CR, I'm not going to say her name right, but you made the cashew Parmesan cheese, and that would have been great in here too, just to add an addition. Now, this is going to go in the oven at about 375 for 35 to 40 minutes until golden brown. And you want to make sure to check the bottom to make sure that, it's not burning. I have never had any problem with this sticking in the pan. You could use parchment paper if you wanted to on the bottom, but this is just a great, great recipe. And I hope that you make it because it's very good. All right, so coming up is Shoba, and she is in Atlanta, Georgia. So take it away.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm Shoba from Atlanta, Georgia, a Food for Life instructor. And I'm delighted to be here to present comfort foods. I hope you can hear me well. And today I'm going to bring you a dish from India, far away in Asia, where we make what is called khichdi or khichdi sometimes, and I'm sure we can spell it out for you. It's basically a dish with rice and beans. It's a combination of rice and beans. And it's a common theme all across India to make khichdi as a comfort food. If we are sick, our mothers make khichdi for us. If we have a fever, if we don't feel too well, if we're coming down with a cold, all of these, for all ailments, khichdi is the only medicine. So it fits really well with food as medicine when we are teaching classes and explaining things to our participants. So today I will be making a khichdi that is simple, and it's from South India. It needs very few ingredients, basically just 3 or 4 ingredients. And we start with brown rice. As you can see, this is just brown. You can get brown basmati rice or short grain rice. Just doesn't matter what kind of brown rice you use. And traditionally it's made with white rice, but we've switched to whole foods plant-based and hence use brown rice. And it's traditionally made with yellow lentils that's available in every American grocery store. But just to make it whole foods and with more fiber, I have switched from yellow split lentils to green lentils. You'll be surprised to know that the green mung beans or green lentils are the same things as the yellow split peas. So inside these green mung beans are tiny kernels of yellow split lentils. So I'm using whole ingredients here. So if you take a cup of brown rice, I typically use a cup of mung bean, green mung bean, but traditionally they generally have the beans to the rice ratio, but I like it 1-to-1. So you can experiment as you please, 1-to-1, or depending on what your family likes and your parents like and the kids like, you can change the ratios. So you add 1 cup of brown rice, 1 cup of green lentils or green mung beans, basically. Add it to an Instant Pot, or you can cook it on the stove top as well. I love to use my Instant Pot because it cooks in just 5 minutes. This is the best comfort food you can have, and it takes only 5 minutes to make it. So add these two, and I add 1:3 cups of water. So for every cup of rice, I'll add 3 cups of water, and for every cup of mung bean, I add 3 cups of water. So it comes out really nice and pretty much on the drier side. And I always add a little bit of water. If you want it a little runny, you can add a little bit of water. If not, you can keep it little on the drier side. So this is what we get when we make this. But to that, I add a little bit of ginger. This is just crushed grated ginger ready to go. But I have given it a different twist and a variation today. After it's cooked and it's still hot, I add a cup of any kind of greens that you have. Today I'm using spinach, so I add in a cup of spinach once it's all cooked and it's hot. So I don't want to cook my spinach. That's why I add it way in the end when it's still hot, and it just cooks in that latent heat, just lightly blanches the greens. So also grated carrots. These can be had raw as well. So I just add it in the very end. About, I would suggest a cup. Let's make it all 1 cup because we're supposed to be eating lots and lots of vegetables. So work it all in, and all you need to do is mix it when it's really, really hot, and you'll have amazing khichdi. And the only spices I use are ginger, grated ginger, or any other kind of ginger that, crushed ginger, and cumin seeds that are roasted. If you can't find cumin seeds that are roasted, or you don't have the raw cumin seeds to roast, you can just use cumin powder from the grocery store, available at all American grocery stores. A pinch of that, maybe a 1/4 teaspoon for every cup of these, for 1:1. And then about 1/4 teaspoon of crushed black pepper. That's all. And then salt, of course, to taste. This is a very simple recipe just to recap everything. 1 cup of rice, 1 cup of green mung beans, 1 cup of carrots, and 1 cup of chopped spinach, a 1/4 teaspoon of ginger, fresh ginger. I usually freeze grated or crushed ginger. I buy a big batch, crush it in my food processor, chop it up fine in my food processor, and save it in ice cube trays so they're easy to go and they don't spoil in the refrigerator. And then a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin powder or whole cumin, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper. That's all. That's all the ingredients you need. It's very easy, very simple. And there are many other variations that I'll introduce you to. You can put potatoes. You can add a chayote squash cut up or steam it and add these things so that they don't overcook in the pressure cooker. You can add garlic. You can add onions. You can add a carrot. You can add cauliflower. And, you know, just experiment and vary the vegetables. Make khichdi often, and it's a quick fix for when you get back from work, and it's a good combination of rice and beans, which is our favorite at home and which is our staple as well in many native cultures all across the globe. So enjoy khichdi, and if you have any questions, I'll be there to answer your questions. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Shobha, and from Atlanta, Georgia. I have a short meal service on Saturdays. So if you're in the Atlanta area, if you're watching from Morehouse School of Medicine, a shout out to you and all my friends and all my support group who are the Whole Foods Plant-Based Support Group. Shout out to you. Thank you for joining today, and see you next time. Thank you very much. Over to Gerardo, and he's going to present an amazing presentation today. Look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Hi there, my name is Gerardo Lázaro, and I'm here from Media, Pennsylvania. Thank you for joining us here in So Many Cooks in the Kitchen, and very happy to be here. This is the first time that I can join in this event after so many times that I've tried. And so this time we're going to do a recipe that is certainly a comfort food for us. It's called garbanzo stew or chickpea stew, and it is one that it is very nice for me, for myself, and also for my family. The white one, and it's based on magnificent beans. I had to start this already just to try to time for the show right now, so I already added the spices that are so great, and just trying to cook here the best way possible. And I just added all the spices, which are the garam masala, which has magnificent flavors and aromas, of course. And the cumin, the curry, and everything else. And right here we are mixing this up. I wish you could be smelling all of this. Is just magnificent. It permeates everything here, and it's all the mixes of the spices are just so great. So we're just giving a couple of minutes for the spices and the diced tomatoes and the tomato paste to kick in, so that all of these flavors can mix and start being absorbed by the tomatoes and form like a little paste there, so that right after that, we're gonna add the chickpeas or the garbanzo, which is the essence here, the beans that are so magnificent, not only for protein, but also for fiber, of course. So here we have approximately 2 to 3 cans of chickpeas. And here we can see how the beans are now going to go into sipping all of those flavors and aromas. We're just giving a couple of minutes for the chickpeas or garbanzos to soak in all the flavors. I we learned about this recipe some time ago, and this is a very great recipe that even convinced my younger son, who is actually not a full 100% plant-based eater, but this is one of his comfort foods, and it quickly became one of our comfort foods. It's something that we can eat in different ways, of course, accompanied by, as I will serve in a moment, with sweet potatoes, which can be boiled, or as we made them in the oven. And this is just a magnificent way to even put more beta carotene coming from the sweet potatoes. Or we can also use pita bread as a way, more or less like a dip, actually, which can give us also the combination and the balance of flavors. Another way in which you can serve this plate, which we're not going to use right now, is brown rice, of course. Some people prefer rice, and in this case, brown rice will be the best way to serve this plate with. Again, to pump all of those grams of fiber that are so great for our body, and that plant-based nutrition gives us the opportunity then to enjoy. I wish you could be smelling all of this, the colors, and we're gonna just add the frozen vegetables so that we can actually bring more color into the mix. And here we have the reds and the oranges, and now we have the yellow and the green. In this case, I'm using frozen corn and edamame, which is a young soybean that, again, gives us even more protein and fiber, so that we have all of this very, very nutritious food. Again, very comforting, very earthy. You can, when you try this recipe, you're going to feel that it's so earthy because it combines so many spices. I just left the last 2 spices for your taste. We are using turmeric, so of course we have to use black pepper and a little bit of salt to your taste, of course. We're just gonna give a couple of minutes to this mix. And I wanted to thank all the team here at So Many Cooks in the Kitchen that are such a magnificent group of professionals, Food for Life instructors that can give us the opportunity, all of us, to mix our knowledge, bring so great recipes in these So Many Cooks in the Kitchen events. Again, that I'm so excited to be here for the first time. It will not be the last, certainly. And just giving a couple of minutes again to get all those flavors mixed in with the garbanzo beans. And we're just going to end by putting one of my favorite leafy green vegetables is Dinosaur Kale. This type of kale is called Dinosaur Kale because the leaf looks like the skin of a dinosaur, like the skin of a reptile. And it's really a very nutritious leafy green vegetable. And that gives us, again, a lot of nutrition, but it's also very low in calories, of course. Some of the most nutritious elements here in kale. So we're gonna give a few more minutes to this mix. And yes, we're going to enjoy this. We are getting ready to serve this with sweet potatoes, orange, very bright orange, the color that I really like. Again, a lot of beta carotene here. And to balance the flavor, of course, because these flavors coming from the earthy spices and the tomatoes can make it a slightly acidic. And so now with the sweet potato is going to balance it. And of course, the pita bread that can give us a little extra flavor there and texture to the plate. Finally, we're just going to pour some, traditional use of, in this case, coconut milk, so that we can give an even extra flavor to this plate. We're going to mix it up, and this is just going to be, as usual, very delicious plate in here. We're gonna speed it up a little bit just so we can pour this right into the plate. And you can enjoy, just like I'm enjoying myself, seeing here all these colors. I think we're ready to plate. Look at this. Look at all these colors. I wish you could smell what I'm smelling here. All these spices, Indian spices that are so nutritious, so good for the brain, and that give this perfect aroma and nutritious blend into the plate. Here we're going to do the same thing, and we are going to plate it, but in this case, we're going to use pita bread just to enjoy this plate in a different way. There you go. It is garbanzo stew or chickpea stew presented in two ways with sweet potatoes or pita bread, depending on your preference. Thank you very much again for enjoying this show with us, and I hope that you enjoy all of these recipes. Again, this is one of our favorite comfort foods, and I'll pass it to the next cook in the kitchen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carolyn Strickland, and I am the last but not least. Today, I am making cookies. What show on comfort food would be complete without cookies? So when I was a little girl, my mom made us cookies a lot, and she's a really good baker, but they weren't plant-based. And one of the things that I missed the most when I went plant-based was cookies. So every recipe I ever found for years had that artificial butter in it, like Earth Balance or whatever. And you know, that has a lot of saturated fat in it. So I have tried for years to come up with a cookie recipe that wouldn't have all of that butter in it, like a whole stick of that stuff in it. So I've been trying to figure out how to do that for years, and I think I finally did it. What I have is a recipe that you can change based on your preferences. There's no eggs, there's no butter, there's no dairy, you know, and you will surprise your friends with them because they really taste like the cookies that you're used to, the cookies that you grew up with. So, and yes, they're cookies. So we're not talking kale here. Okay, these are cookies, but every now and then you have to admit you need a cookie. So these are a healthier version of a cookie. So what I've done is take 1/3 cup of peanut butter and already put it in the bowl. You could use almond butter. You could use something I found at Costco recently, pecan butter. So any kind of nut butter. We're only using 1/3 cup in 2 dozen cookies. So it is spreading that fat, even though it's only 1/3 cup, it's spreading it out pretty thin, but it still adds a nice flavor and helps hold the cookie together. So I'm doing today sort of the basic peanut butter recipe, but like I said, switch out to almond butter, pecan butter, cashew butter. You could even make them with tahini, and I have made tahini cookies before too using this recipe. You could use the same thing, 1/3 cup of tahini. It's a very interesting flavor. All right, so we have 1/3 cup of peanut butter, and this is my bowl for doing the wet ingredients. So what I'm adding to it is 2 tablespoons of unsweetened applesauce. You could also use 2 tablespoons of mashed banana if you want to. You can make your own applesauce. I just get, you know, jars of organic applesauce, unsweetened applesauce at the store, but it's easy to make it yourself too. So we're going to mix that in. And then we're adding in, so it's not a cookie if it doesn't have sweetener. And it took me a while to try and really learn about sweeteners. So what I'm doing today is 1/2 cup of something called sucanat. And sucanat is actually dehydrated cane juice. And it is a very unrefined, low glycemic sweetener. So we're putting in half a cup of that. A scant, so when I say scant half cup on the recipe, meaning you don't have to have a really overloaded full half cup of it. Or it's 1 cup of sweetener, but a scant cup, meaning don't overload the cup. All right, and then I'm also using coconut sugar today because that's also very low on the glycemic index, and it is an unrefined coconut sugar. So I'm still working on this recipe. One of the things that I would like to do next is figure out how to replace the sweetener with date paste, but that will mean changing the wet ingredients a little bit because that's a little more wet. So I'm going to have to figure that one out, but I'll let y'all know if I figure that one out. So right now what we're using is just some low glycemic sweeteners. Okay, so that is the sweetener. 1 scant cup of coconut sugar, sucanat, or a mixture. And like you just saw me do, I mixed them. So I have coconut sugar and sucanat. And then a 1/3 cup of unsweetened soy milk. You could also use rice milk. You could use almond milk. You could use cashew milk. You could use oat milk. Like I said, this is a really forgiving recipe. You can use your very favorite non-dairy milk, whatever plant milk you like best. Okay, so we'll get that mixed in. I like to use a fork because, or you could use a whisk because that helps break up the clumps of peanut butter if you have lumps in your nut butter. And we'll get that nice and smooth. You could use a mixer too, it might go faster. But it's kind of fun. Just stir it all up. Okay, and then once you have that all stirred up, we're just adding a teaspoon of vanilla. And I use this kind, just organic vanilla extract from Whole Foods. And we'll mix that in. Okay, so that's the wet ingredients. And then in a separate bowl, the dry ingredients. I have 1 cup of, you could use regular organic white flour if you want to, unbleached. You could use whole wheat pastry flour. You could use spelt flour. You could use, I haven't tried it with oat flour yet, but I think that would work. I haven't tried it with a gluten-free flour yet, but I think that would probably work. But 1 cup, and what I've done is sort of a mixture of different flours, and I used some spelt flour today, which here it is. So I have some spelt because spelt is actually an ancient grain that's a little bit higher in protein and fiber. So we'll use that. And then adding in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, which you could leave out if you are on a low sodium diet. And remember to always use iodized salt when you're using salt, if you use it. And then a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And I just used this kind from Whole Foods. Okay, so 1/2 teaspoon of that. And then we'll just mix up the dry ingredients. Okay. And then they are ready to add to the wet ingredients. Now, sucanat, that sweetener I mentioned a minute ago that's dehydrated cane juice, sometimes it's big, thick granules of it. So if you let it sit for just a little bit, it'll kind of dissolve a little bit better instead of having little chunks of granules in your wet ingredients. Okay, and that was probably long enough. All right, so we'll add in the dry ingredients and mix that all up. So what I love about this recipe is that it is so versatile. You could change it to be pecan butter with white chocolate chips, and yes, they do make dairy-free white chocolate chips. They're not easy to find, but I found them on Whole Foods. So, I mean, not on Whole Foods, on Amazon. So you could make a pecan butter white chocolate chip and throw in some dried cherries. That would be delicious. Or you could make it with almond butter and throw in some almonds and some raisins instead of the chocolate chips. All right, so this is really thick and sticky, and that's kind of how we want it. And then we're adding in a whole cup of whole rolled oats. Okay, so sometimes I toast my oats first, just lightly put them in the oven at like 300 degrees for just a few minutes until you smell them. They start smelling nice and toasty, and take them out. That gives the toasted oat flavor is really nice. I didn't do that today. I mean, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So it's up to you. And then mix that all in. It's a very, very sticky batter. So if you've made traditional standard American diet type cookies before, the batter is not usually this sticky. So you do want this to be sticky. It's sort of how it works best. Okay, and then we're adding in a half a cup of non-dairy chocolate chips. And there's several different brands out there you can try. Sunspire is one of them. Enjoy Life is one of them. I have some examples here. So this is Enjoy Life dark chocolate morsels. And Enjoy Life, they don't have any allergens in it. That's what they're known for, is the whole, back of the label says free from all kinds of different allergens, including dairy and eggs and that kind of thing. Also, there's mini semi-sweet chocolate chips, little teeny tiny ones. This is a different brand I found the other day. Premium baking chips, oat milk and dark chocolate, and they're totally plant-based. There's no, it says vegan right on the back. So that's an interesting option, made with oat milk. I think they were trying to go for sort of a milk chocolate flavor there. And then get those mixed in. Ooh, it's a very thick and sticky batter. Okay, and then a half a cup of toasted almonds. You could use walnuts, you could use pecans, you could use your favorite nut, and if you don't like nuts, you could leave them out. So it is a forgiving recipe, like I said. Okay, so you want this dough to be very, very sticky and thick. So this is perfect right here, because it's hard to stir. There. Okay, so I'm going to show you what that looks like. It's thick and sticky, and the coconut sugar is giving it sort of a brown color, but that's sort of what we're looking for here. Okay, I'll move that out of the way. And then when I bake, I like to use baking mats on my cookie sheets. So this has a thin silicone baking mat, and it's washable. It can go in the oven up to, I think, 600 degrees. We're only going to 425 degrees, so it's perfectly fine. But this is a really nice brand. I forget the name of it, but Silpat is a good brand in these. Or you could use parchment paper, just a sheet of parchment paper. Do not make the mistake I made one time, which was using wax paper. Don't do that, because the wax melts when you put it in the oven at a high temperature and things will stick to it. So don't do that. So parchment paper or a silicone baking sheet. And then we'll just take a couple of spoons and set it on here. So it's very, very sticky. So making this at home, I might use, one spoon and then my fingers, and then, I can lick my fingers off when I'm done, but I'm not going to do that if I'm baking it for somebody else. So, so you're just going to lay them out, probably 12 on each sheet, because it makes about 24 cookies. And I'm not going to make you watch me bake them, but I already have some already finished that are just beautiful. These are pecan with white chocolate chips and pecans, and this is peanut butter with dark chocolate chunks that are the Enjoy Life brand, and walnuts. I added walnuts to this one. So the one I'm making right here, peanut butter, mini chocolate chips, and toasted almonds. So it is really very forgiving. You can, throw in whatever you want to, but try to just keep it in the ratios of, the add-ins are about a half cup each. So you don't want to overload the cookie with too many add-ins and then have them kind of fall apart because there's not enough holding it together. So I think somebody also, when I brought cookies to somebody yesterday after a surgery, she said they reminded her of cowboy cookies, which I think is sort of everything in your kitchen, like kitchen sink cookies, you just throw everything in. So, but like I said, very forgiving. Add in raisins if you want to. Dark cherries, dried cranberries are really good in them too, but just try to keep it in those same ratios of the other add-ins, making the add-ins equal about a cup. So you could do, a fourth cup of raisins and a fourth cup of nuts and a half a cup of chocolate chips. So, it's up to you. Play with your food. I encourage you to play with your food. So, and I hope everybody gives these a try. They are quite delicious, and you will actually fool your friends and family who don't realize they're actually completely vegan. There's no animal products at all, and they taste very much like the traditional cookies you grew up eating. So I hope you'll give them a try, and if you have any questions, please put them in the comments, because we're going to questions and answers right now.
All right, what a great show. I wanted to ask for your forgiveness for any technical errors, and all the technical errors blame on me. This is my idea to use this new platform, and I apologize. We have a wonderful group of instructors, and they all, I think, did a great job. And again, please accept my apologies for any technical problems that we had. I think at the beginning there may have been a little problem getting on. So let's begin questions and answers. There's lots of questions, and we're going to get our folks back on. And feel free to keep posting your questions. And let me start with a few that I have. So I wanted to ask Carolyn, since you just finished, I wanted to ask you kind of a non-food question. There were some comments that came up that you're the one who sings our theme music, and you're a professional musician. So have you been able to integrate music into food?
I like to sing while I cook. Yeah, that's a good question. When I do cooking classes, I do actually like to play music in the background. I think music is really a great thing to have during a dinner when you're having, friends over for dinner. Music is a great thing to include with that. I do have some background in music therapy as well, and working with people involving music. Music brings out a lot of emotions in people. And so, and food brings out a lot of emotions in people, I have discovered. So that's an interesting combination of things, isn't it? I hadn't really thought about that too much, but it'd be interesting to do a cooking class with different music in the background to see how people take it. But that's a great question.
Susanna, there were some questions about riced cauliflower, and to be honest, it's relatively new for me too. My family's not gluten-free. I've never riced my own cauliflower. I bought it frozen, and I've enjoyed cooking with it, but I don't have that much knowledge about it, and I think others in the audience are curious. Can you share for a moment a little bit about riced cauliflower? Do you make it? Do you buy it? And just a little more general about comments about riced cauliflower.
Yeah, so I do make it when I have more time. I'll just buy a head of cauliflower, and I actually have a ricer that my mother-in-law gave me a long time ago, and but mostly I just buy it frozen, and it is gluten-free because all it is cauliflower that has been riced, and it's so easy. I often will just roast it like I did for my cheese recipe, and then I'll just sprinkle it on my salad. We'll just have it as a side dish. I'll cook it like a Spanish fried rice because my husband loves spicy things. So I use it in any way that you would use regular rice. And it's easiest just to buy it frozen, but you can rice your own in the food processor. It's just, I really enjoy it. We've gotten into it the last year or so. And it's easy.
Angelita, there was a nice question that came up while you were presenting, and it was about kinds of tofu. I'd like to hear your perspective about different kinds of tofu. What kinds of tofu are there, and how would you choose one over another kind?
Well, I found 4 different ones. I found a silken tofu, which is more for spreads or for desserts. And then I found a soft tofu, which is what my recipe calls for. There's a firm tofu, which is wonderful for like crumbles, or if you're going to use it as a meat substitute, like in a spaghetti sauce or a tofu scramble. And then there's the extra firm tofu, and that one I use to replicate like a chicken texture. And what I do with that is I freeze it in its package. I take it out and I thaw it, and then I put it back in the freezer. Freeze it again, then take it out and thaw it, and then I squeeze out the excess liquid, and then I just coat it with my favorite seasonings and spray it with a little bit of aquafaba, the chickpea liquid, and I put it in my air fryer, and that gives me like a cutlet type texture, and I use that to make a mock chicken cacciatore. So those are the 4 types that I use, and you can find it in packages in the refrigerator, and then there's shelf-stable ones as well. I have found the ones that are in the little boxes that are shelf-stable. I think those to me have a better flavor, but it's up to every person. I just suggest everybody go out there and try it, and everybody's taste is different, and there's a lot of people that really are a texture person. I'm one of those, and I think that's probably why I like the shelf-stable one for the texture.
And I just wanted to add to that the question also talked about nutrition, and if there are any differences in nutrition between silken and firm, extra firm. I'm not aware of them. Tofu is very nutritive, and we posted a little bit earlier a link, and if you want to find it, come to pcrm.org, and you can find our soy fact sheet. So soy is very, very healthful. And the other quick thing I'll throw in is I know some people, when they start playing with tofu, say, oh, I've read about you have to squeeze it, get all the water out. You do, but if you're a lazy cook like me, sometimes I don't bother doing that much of it. I just, if I'm cooking, I get the tofu, I do a quick squeeze, and I have at it. I actually do have a tofu squeeze, but I almost never use it. A company sent it to me kind of as a promotion. Mark, I wanted you to take a few minutes and talk about what does it mean to be a Food for Life instructor? We had somebody who asked that it sounds exciting. What does it take to become a Food for Life instructor? How do we get certified? What's the process? And we posted a link. So can you kind of describe what is a Food for Life instructor and how do we become Food for Life instructors, please?
Sure. So Food for Life instructors are licensed by the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, or PCRM, which was founded by Dr. Neil Barnard back in 1985 and consists of, I think it's over 10,000 physicians, and I believe there's over maybe like 150, almost 200,000 members. And they really have several different arms. One is working with the government on food nutrition and so forth. And then other is animal testing and animal rights. And then the third is, cooking and healthy nutrition. So Food for Life instructors have varied backgrounds. I know amongst us, we have a retired physician. I've worked in healthcare directly and indirectly for 40 years in an administrative level, and have been a trainer. And we have nurses and NPs, nurse practitioners, and people that have no medical background but have a passion for cooking. So the process is pretty rigorous. I mean, when I decided to be a Food for Life instructor, it was as part of my encore career. So after working myself to the bone, so to speak, I decided I was fortunate enough to kind of pause and take a look at my life and decided to apply. And you have to fill out a big application and have references, and then record a cooking demonstration. And then you get interviewed. I was interviewed via phone and was accepted to the program. And, note that not everybody that applies gets accepted. It's only about 30% of folks that apply get accepted to be Food for Life instructors. I mean, they're really looking for people with a passion, with experience, with some kind of knowledge coming into it. But then they train us very, very well. We spent 3 days, actually. I think I had posted in the chat that my group, so Nancy Gerardo, Angelita, and I'm missing somebody. One more person was in our group. Jennifer was in our group too. That's right. Oh God, I'm sorry. Yeah, and so we were the last group that was licensed prior to COVID in March of 2019. And as Nancy so astutely remembered, the COVID was hot on our heels. And I remember we were in LA for that class. And it was when we first heard this thing, COVID, and the first COVID person was found to be positive in LA. And I flew home, and that was the last time I was on a plane. But anyway, so, we also have monthly professional development and provide all these classes that are developed by PCRM by physicians and nurses and registered dietitians. So, we're not there to provide health information in any of our classes, our food demonstrations and cooking classes, but we are there to really teach people how to transition to a whole food, plant-based way of life. And all of us have a business where we're independent and we're supported by PCRM and are licensed to be able to use all the materials. I think the last time I counted, we have 65 courses. Many of them are bundled into series, but we teach on a variety of subjects. And oh, by the way, we all have to be whole food plant-based as well. So.
And that's great. I'm always humbled by this group because this is one of the few groups I can think of that there's just so much expertise. If I never met Cody, if I never knew her, I just saw there's a name, Cody Stubbe, and she's in Nebraska, and I knew somebody who was in Nebraska. Without hesitation, I'd say there's an awesome person, and now I know she really is, a person named Cody Stubbe who can answer all your questions. All of us, the training we go through, not only are we, most of, I didn't know this till recently, most of us aren't selected. They picked me, go figure. And so, first of all, it's a very competitive selection process. And then we have ongoing training. So every month, with I think one or two exceptions, we have, the most recent nutrition information and ideas of new ways to teach classes and a lot of great education. I'm just so honored to be part of this group. And I think Mark may have mentioned it, but I don't know if headquarters has decided when we're going to start, taking more, doing another training, and if it'll be virtual or in person. So we can't speak for headquarters, and we just don't know. So keep an eye on that website. And by the way, Lori just asked if we get other certifications. No, so we get our Food for Life certification, and then many of us choose. I don't have the eCornell, but I know many of the others do. Speaking of Cody, could you take a moment, and I know you said you have a loud lawnmower next door, so if it's still going, we can come back to you in a moment, but if you're good, you're good. And hats off to Cody. So she really was the key person to get the technology going this time, and I thank you for doing all that, Cody. Could you, when you were talking about your pizza, and you have 3 girls, can you talk a little bit about the process of including the children in your kitchen, what that entails and how they're involved with making pizza? And then we can use that as a segue to talk a little bit about so many kids in the kitchen, if you would.
Yeah, so every Friday it's our tradition to make homemade pizza, and then we watch a movie, and it's just been such a thrill. The kids and I and my husband all look forward to it, and they start kind of figuring out what ingredients do they want. It's usually a variety of vegetables, and they pull out whatever they want. It's the very vibrant colors. So of course we have the purple from the red cabbage, and we have red from the sauce, and we have green from the kale, and mushrooms and onions and all those. And it's so important to get these kids involved at an early age, because the more that they help cook, the more they're gonna probably start trying these other things, these healthy foods, so the vegetables and everything, and fruits too. So if we have them start cooking with fruits, and do like a fruit salad. I think I did a video with Nora doing a fruit salad, and they're just more apt to try different things, and it's so fun. They want to share what they've created with other people, and it's a great way to introduce people who are not whole food plant-based to these recipes if your kid makes it. So if grandpa or grandma come over and they say, "Oh, what'd you make, Nora?" And Nora will be like, "Yes, I made this, and I made it from scratch, and you gotta try it. It's delicious." Well, they're more apt to try it as well, right? Because their grandkid made it. So getting the kids involved, we also let them, carefully, like my oldest, Ava, she's 12, and she can use a knife without me having to worry about cutting herself. But we do have these cutting gloves for all the kids, appropriate sized, and even Nora was learning how to kind of cut a date with the gloves on and everything. And so just getting them involved is so important at an early age, because they're more apt to eat more healthier. And then so we have so many kids in the kitchen. And our next show is coming up, I believe it's April 24th, and we're going to do so many salads. So my girls are working on their recipes and trying to figure out what exactly they want to make. And I'm hoping Nora will join us. Sometimes she joins, sometimes she doesn't. You just never know about that little girl. So we're so excited. And And then Brenda Davis, I think, is going to do a write-up for us as well for that. So we're really excited. And I think my girls are actually going to be featured in PCRM's Recipe of the Week, the Chef Takeover. So be watching for that on April 20th, I believe, is when it comes out. So I'm really excited that they're going to be featured in that.
Yeah, her kids are great, and they're an important part of so many kids in the kitchen. We have my daughter that you saw, Anuragni, and then we also have a Food for Life instructor who happens to also be called Ella. One of Cody's daughters is Ella, and she has Max and Mia. I think Max is 8, and I think Mia is 11, I think, or 10, maybe 10, something like that. So those are fun shows. I wanted to, I have a technical question for Jen. So Jen, this question came up about cornmeal. So somebody had asked about the grind of cornmeal. Is it okay to use medium grind cornmeal? How much does the grind of cornmeal affect what you did?
There. Well, the finer grind you usually save for baking because it's a finer grind, like a flour. You can do grits with it. As a matter of fact, the quicker grits are a finer ground, so they cook faster. So it's just taken away more of that extra skeleton of the wheat, or the corn, and brought it more of a process. It's more of a processed ingredient. So I always go for the stone ground because it's more whole and healthier, but you can do it. You get a finer grind actually, which is why cornbread, you want to use cornmeal. But grits, when it's firm, is sort of like a cornbread, only a lot thicker and denser.
Okay, that sounds good. That question did come up, and I also wanted to ask. Oops, excuse me 1 second. I wanted to ask Sarah a question. So one thing in your presentation that was really cool, and there was some comments about it, was the idea of color, using color in your cooking, and that's important to me too. Can you talk about first of all, the science behind it, about phytochemicals? And then can you talk about, in your case, you were making these amazingly looking pizzas. Do you take into account, when you're choosing colors for your pizzas, contrast and colors that go together? And do any of those things factor into how you prepare your pizzas? I think Sarah might be frozen. Yeah, we can't hear her. Okay. Would somebody else like to take that? Oh, Sarah, are you there? Looks like we can't hear her. Would somebody else like to take this question? Are you trying to answer? Looks like there's some audio problem.
So I guess I think about my pizza and salad. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, it looks like there's some.
Philip?
Yeah. You're breaking in and out. Try again.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So as I'm cooking, just like with pizza, and if we make a salad, a soup, or a stew, I just kind of run through my mind those colors: red, orange, yellow, green.
Okay, I think she's breaking up again, but I think basically you look at what colors you have.
So we teach in our Food for Life classes how to eat from the power plate, and then we also want to make sure we eat a rainbow of different types of foods and colors, of course. So whenever I'm preparing something, I kind of run through my mind, what can I add that's red, that's orange, that's yellow, that's green? Because we know that.
Okay, I'm sorry. It looks like we're having some audio problems. So let me just add one comment about. Go on.
Whenever I'm cooking, I think about what can I add to add color, because I know I'm upping the nutritional value of whatever it is I'm preparing. So we know we see the red tomatoes, and if you cook those, we have a big kick of lycopene, the beta carotene in our orange vegetables and sweet potatoes. And those nutrients help support our immune system. They also help our bodies fight off other chronic conditions as well.
Yeah, so color is a good thing. When I was growing up, you know, bless my mom, she's not with us anymore. So her intent was good. She was a great cook, uh, uh, and so, but she would often use things that had artificial colors in them, right? That was kind of what people did at the time. I
Not
don't.
sure what's going on.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So anyhow, those kinds of colors aren't what we're talking about. The colors we're talking about are natural colors from fruits and vegetables, and they're loaded with what are called phytochemicals. And phytochemicals generally have great health maintaining and disease prevention properties. One example is cancer. The phytochemicals are powerful. They indicate there's powerful antioxidants in the food, and they're really great at fighting things like cancer and other conditions. And by the way, I wanted to have a special, a couple notes. I wanted to have a special shout out for Sarah and for Gerardo. These are, they're seasoned. They're just as expert as anybody else here. Outstanding Food for Life instructors. But this is the first time we've been graced with their presence, that they're part of the show. And it's wonderful. I'm so delighted to have you guys. And I hope that you'll be regulars. It doesn't sound like you're new anymore, but Nancy, thanks to Nancy as well. She joined recently, and she seems like she's been doing it for such a long time. You do it so perfectly. I feel like you've been doing it since the very beginning. And Nancy, I want to come to you, and I want you to talk about, I like the perspective you bring about the medical perspective. And you had spent some time talking about cookware. And one of these days, I think we'll probably do a show on cookware. Can you talk about nonstick cookware for pancakes and in general? Is nonstick a good choice? And what kinds of cookware do you prefer? And I know you covered some of this in your presentation, but I'd love for you to talk about cookware a little bit more.
Well, there's two aspects to cookware for me as a Food for Life instructor. One is the non-stick, and the other is the induction hob. Because while I'm teaching, I've cleared it away, but I have an induction hob, which is fantastic for cooking. If anybody's ever thinking about getting an induction hob, it's really sensitive and really quick. And for that, one needs specific pans. And the pans I have for that are non-stick and specific for the induction hob. And non-stick is fantastic because the whole point of this way of eating, the low fat, whole food, no added fat, whole food, plant-based way of eating is conducive to using non-stick. Because of course, what we traditionally do, without even thinking about it, is put a lot of oil in our pans to make them non-stick. And having non-stick pans just removes the need for that. It is still possible, I would like to say, so if you have non-stick, so when I did my pancake recipe, I showed how to just put a fine smear of oil on if you don't have non-stick. That was purely for demonstration purposes. I didn't actually need to do it in my pan. One of the things that a lot of people aren't aware of as well is even if you don't have non-stick pans, don't go and throw out all your good pans to get non-stick, because even if you don't have non-stick, watch a video on how to saute with water. And honestly, it's, you know, I'm in my late 50s, and it wasn't until a couple of years ago I even had the concept that you didn't need oil to saute food. It was mind-boggling that either I was that stupid or that naive. I don't know which. But if you don't have non-stick pans, you can still water saute very easily. So basically, heat up your pan. If you have vegetables, you want onions, you want to saute, put a little bit of water in and let that heat up till it's bubbling. Put your vegetables in, let them saute. If they start to stick, add a little bit more water, scrape them off, unstick them, and it works beautifully. So, and you get the really nice browned flavor of the vegetables, even with the water sauteing. So I want to get off track there with the pans, but non-stick or regular pans, either way, you can still do no added fat, whole food, plant-based cooking.
You know, that was one thing new for me. I've been vegan for many, many years, for decades. I really wasn't whole food plant-based. And when I became certified, I learned how to cook without fat. And it's an interesting value proposition because we recommend 10% fat calories. Why 10%? Because every single study that talks about any kind of reversal, cleaning up your vasculature or anything, it goes away, reversal goes away at 10%. So why not just aim for 10%? And what I tell my students is, There are other credible people out there and organizations that allow for more 12, 15, but I think everybody does suggest watching your fat. So whether you subscribe to what we suggest, 10% or maybe a little bit higher, there is an allocation that we want you to have, no more than such amount of fat. And by the way, this is flexible in the sense that being plant-based is super important, being vegan, plant-based, but you can cheat on the fat once in a while. If you go out, we have a wonderful ice cream place downtown and they make lots of vegan ice cream. And I love it. I've been telling my wife, we haven't gone there in a while, we need to go. And it's not low fat, but if you have ice cream, we have it. I talk about it a lot, but we eat it maybe 5 times a year. That's not a problem if I have a higher fat ice cream once in a while, or if I eat something which includes a little bit more fat. But the point I want to make is that when you are trying to restrict your fat and you have a choice, do you want that ice cream from downtown, or do you want to get a little piece of chocolate? Or do you really want olive oil? I tell you what I prefer. I'd rather have my chocolate in my allocation of fat. And so that's something that gets into the calculus of things. And this thing about sauteing, you don't need, not only do you not need oil, but the key thing is to have a high quality pan. And then you don't need water either, because I know there's been some comments coming in. So Janice, I'm a recent water saute convert. Sure, so water is great, but if you have a high quality pan, you don't need water or broth, as Debbie suggests. You can just have a high quality pan. One of the problems with adding liquids is it can take the nutrients out of your food. So that's the other kind of issue. But it's good to kind of move away from oil.
Dylan,
yeah,
Mark, yeah, if I could just piggyback on something Nancy said about not getting hung up on the pan and not to get hung up on equipment in general. So I seem to have had a run of students recently that are really concerned. What kind of equipment do I need? They think they have to go and buy out, go out and buy Instapots and high-speed blenders and when you're getting started, you don't. I mean, I do a lot of my classes on an old Farberware electric skillet that I got for my wedding present 35 years ago. And, if stuff starts burning a little bit in there, I just deglaze it with a little bit of water or some red wine vinegar, so you don't, to convert to this, to transition to this lifestyle, this eating lifestyle, you do not need all kind of fancy equipment. I mean, we, quite honestly, you go to pcrm.org recipes, most of those recipes on there need a basic pan and pot and some utensils, and you don't need all these other blenders. And a lot of the recipes we show, and I should say the majority of the recipes that we talk about on this show are probably the next step up. They're not quite beginners. Some of them are beginners, like the one Nancy did is right off of PCRMs, but a lot of these are, on other sites or sites that, or recipes we've developed. But, again, I just really don't let equipment scare you away from this diet. It's way too worth your health to not try this diet.
It's easy. It's really easy. Just, and here's my brag. You guys all know what I'm about to say. And I'm about to brag, and it's not about me. It's about the approach. It's so easy to be plant-based. I've known my wife, 16, 17 years? And I've never repeated dinner for her. She gets something every night she's never had before. And that doesn't reflect on me. That reflects on how easy it is to be plant-based. There's so many great choices out there. It's so easy. Gerardo, I wanted to come to you for a second. And this is really a comment that Mark has brought up before. Mark really wants us to do a show one day that really focuses on the needs of the underserved. And I think we should do that at some point. Gerardo, I want you to take the angle, because one thing that's really cool about you is you're ready, willing, and quite able to take a lot of nutrition information and translate it to other languages, in particular Spanish. Can you talk a little bit about how the information we have, the food choices we make, and anybody can pitch in, but I want to start with Gerardo, affects in particular certain populations?
Can you hear me well? Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So thank you for the question. That's a very, very good topic. And I have to confess that ever since I became a plant-based eater, ethnic foods have become a very common staple at home, particularly Mexican food and Central American food. cooking for underserved people, and I will mention, of course, ethnic minorities, particularly here in the U.S. Although, as I do my classes for Food for Life in Spanish over Zoom right now, I have people from other countries that join us, and we're very happy for that. And so we also have to cater a little bit in terms of ingredients and, of course, equipment, because in other countries, these high-priced equipments are not even available yet. But going back to your question, I think that the whole food plant-based nutrition lifestyle, particularly low in oil, is something that would tremendously benefit everybody, but in particular ethnic and minority populations that may be unfortunately suffering a lot from the different socioeconomic aspects that surround their life, not by choice, of course, and that may translate, unfortunately, into a very high prevalence of chronic diseases. And so going and following a whole food plant-based nutrition lifestyle can help them go back to their roots, incorporate a lot of what their ethnic and minority population cuisine expertise, cook like grandma. That's how they would say. That is already mostly plant-based. And unfortunately, when they come into this country, here in the US particularly, they assimilate the SAD diet, right? The standard American diet that is very prevalent in fats, particularly saturated fats, and high intake of animal protein. And that's when you start seeing the steep increase in the incidence of chronic diseases. For Latinos, which is my minority population, diabetes, type 2 diabetes is extremely prevalent. And that is something that is very detrimental for anybody's health. And one of the things that I have learned is that people believe that these things run in the family. And I don't remember where I heard this, but I think it was a great line. More than genes running in the family, which of course they do, but the predisposition to diseases doesn't run in the family. What really runs in the family are recipes. And so I think that it's those recipes, and particularly with all the added things that you want to put on when you live in this country that are so, sometimes way too much in size and in quality of foods. That's when you distort the original recipes. So going back to your point, I think that there are different factors to consider here, and providing this information that is so valuable to populations that are not necessarily English proficient, I think it's something that I value a lot, and that I'm trying to work with colleagues here from the Food for Life instructor pool, starting with Angelita, for example. I had the pleasure of interviewing her last year for what I started as a bilingual podcast to provide the information of plant-based nutrition in Spanish as well. So you can find that on my website. And we're starting to provide this information again, not only in audio and video, in more than one language, but also in printed materials and in the classes that we do via Zoom.
And I wanted to put a quick shameless plug as well, is that lifestyle medicine is really important, and there needs to be more of a focus on it. And I'm privileged to have a role in a film, which I'll put up there, called Code Blue. We released it this year, and please visit codebluedoc.com. And it's a compelling film about a friend of mine who was diagnosed with MS. And she happens to be a doctor, but doctors get sick and they see their own doctors. And her doctor said, you got to go on this really difficult regimen. And the regimen was tough. And so she did her own research, and she said, hey, doc, I know, I'm a doctor, and I've looked. There's a lot of research that a plant-based diet can address MS. And her doctor said, no, you got to do this. And so eventually she went vegan, she went whole food plant-based, and now she's a fellow in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and we've made this film about her. She has overcome MS. She's symptom-free. So I encourage you to watch Code Blue, and the website will give you some information. Quick technical question. We'll wrap up in just a couple minutes, and I appreciate people hanging with us. I know this has gone long, and here's a comment from Janice Dorn. A great gift to underserved populations would be a gift of a cooking pan and a trip to the produce department. Yeah, I agree. There's a lot that could be done in that regard. We have food deserts, and there's a film I might recommend called, who remembers what it's called? It's Soul Food Junkies. Highly recommend that film that addresses some of these issues. I wanted just a quick to you, Carolyn. There was a question about white chocolate chip cookies, white chocolate chips. Where can you get white chocolate chips?
I saw that. So I think Lisa posted that. And I tried to answer that on there, but my answer is I found them on Amazon. So vegan, and they even say vegan white chocolate. Now, I wouldn't call them health food, but my husband doesn't really like to eat dark chocolate because the amount of caffeine just keeps him awake, and so he can't have, if he has any, he's just going to be like jittery and shaky. So he just doesn't have chocolate, which, I feel like he's missing out. But, so I search for things like white chocolate so he can have it because there's no caffeine in it. But I certainly wouldn't call them health food, but, they are vegan. So there's no animal products. Most white chocolate, if you look at the grocery store, at any bag of white chocolate chips, it's going to have dairy every time. And so just searching for it on Amazon, I put in vegan white chocolate chips and came up with this bag of them. There's a few different brands. There's a place in New York that makes white chocolate chips. King David's, I want to say, something like that. It's like a bakery, but they make their own white chocolate chips and sell them on Amazon. But I found these and thought I would try them as well. So CG Gourmet. So
it's funny because my daughter's been vegan since before conception, and so and we homeschool, so we cover all sorts of interesting topics. We've been homeschooling. This is our 6th year of homeschooling, and we were talking about. She had never heard of white chocolate. I said, yeah, there's a thing called white chocolate, sweetie. And I was describing to her what it is. And I knew I haven't had white chocolate in many years, but I know there are vegan options for it. So nowadays, it's so easy to be vegan. Easy. Any restaurant. You like cheese? There's how many different kinds of vegan cheeses? You like milk? There's so many kinds of milk. You like yogurt? I make my own yogurt. And being whole food plant-based is not that much harder. It's still quite easy. And I hope we've shown that to you with our comfort foods. Sarah, now that you're back, is your audio working? Did you want to add a final comment about, because I'm sorry we couldn't enjoy all of your wisdom. You were sharing something about color and phytochemicals, and I filled in, but I couldn't do as well as you would have. So did you want to share anything further about color? We couldn't hear all that you said.
Oh, yeah, I had some technical issues. Not even sure how far you got, but I was beginning to talk about the rainbow plate and how when we teach our Food for Life classes, we take a trip around the power plate as well as introduce the idea of eating from the rainbow, picking fruits and vegetables from each color group throughout the day, if not, within a particular meal. And so we know things like lycopene in our tomatoes, which you get in the pizza and some of the other dishes we saw today, as well as beta-carotene that we find in our orange fruits and vegetables. So those are just a couple of examples of, the additional nutrients you can add to boost your meal.
Great. Let's start to wrap up because we have gone late. But Cody, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about our next show, which is a kids show, and it's 2 weeks. I know we talked about it a minute ago. Would you mind telling us again what's going on in 2 weeks with our kids?
Yeah, so it's April 24th, and I believe it is 12:30 Eastern time. I'll have to double check that. And so our kids, so my 3 daughters and Philip's daughter New, and then Ella Rodriguez's kids, me and Max, are the So Many Kids in the Kitchen. And so we're going to do kind of a similar thing like what we do for us adults here is we go kitchen to kitchen, and our kids, though, are going to be actually doing the presentations, and us as adults, we're just going to be behind the camera and just kind of help guide them, and then we're going to have a live Q&A at the end as well. And our topic is so many salads, and I'm sure all your kids are working on Anu's probably working on her recipe, and me and Max and my 3 daughters are working on their recipes, so they're excited to share them with everybody.
So the thing that's different about those shows is we actually have a lot of people who like to cook with us. And so we try to get the kids to get the recipes done a little sooner, and we try to release the recipes a day or two in advance. So if you have any kids in your life, your own or others, then please tune in. We did something kind of fun. Gerardo, as well as Janin and Susanna, we this week, in trying our new technology, had a preview, and I thought that was pretty fun. I think we'll try this again. And the idea we have with the kids is there'll be no adults at all. We'll have all the kids, and we'll be behind the scenes talking about the upcoming show. So we'll try to do that. We'll figure out when, but a few days before the show. Who would like to talk about our anniversary show coming up, which is in May? I think it's May 22nd. Who would like to take a moment and share about that? Karen, why don't you say something about our anniversary show?
It's May 22nd. Yeah, so we've been doing this a whole year, and is it celebration foods? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, so it's 1 year, and we haven't decided what we're doing, but we want, celebratory foods.
Yeah, so yeah, it should be a lot of fun, and I hope a lot of you guys will join us. I have an idea of what I'm making. I don't know about everybody else, but we'll see.
It'll be fun. Whatever we make will be fun. So it's, I feel like we formed a family. I haven't met, Mark, I don't know why. I've never met you. Gerardo, I've never met you. Nancy, I'm unfortunately not met you. Sarah, I have met you. Did you know we're both math teachers, which is pretty cool. I see your isosceles triangles. I've been lucky to meet her. Carolyn, thankfully, I've met you and your husband a number of times. And Karen, unfortunately not, or Susanna, or Jen, and Cody, it feels like we've met many times, but we haven't. How late were we hanging out together last night online? You want to admit that?
I think it was about 1 o'clock my time.
2 o'clock my time, getting ready for the show.
If I have bags under my eyes, that's why.
Yeah, you look great as always. So with that, thanks everybody for hanging out with us, and we hope we've shared some good tips. The recipes are going to be available there for you, so try them out, and hope to see you at our kids show and at our next show. So thanks for joining, everybody.
So many cooks in the kitchen, so many recipes to share. So many cooks in the kitchen with meals for you to prepare. We've got fruits and grains, veggies and beans, more healthy food than you've ever seen. So many cooks in the kitchen, plant-based meals to prepare. So many cooks in the kitchen with ideas we're happy to share.